So I think thanks to Arnab and Prafulji, I am a recent entrance to this exciting world of maritime domain awareness. Though in my entire career of 38 years, it was only intelligence and security that was my bread and butter. So each phase we learn new things. So I'm sure that today there will be even newer things to learn from all of you.
Just take this card. Hello. Yes, yes. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Are you based in Chennai, Sadhmanand, or
Yes,
elsewhere?
I am based at Chennai, but right now I am not there. I am traveling, but basically I am at Chennai.
Okay,
No
that's
problem.
good.
You join, sir. No problem, sir. Yes. Sir.
You are at Delhi, is it?
Yes.
No, I'm in
So,
Bangalore.
yes, yes. I will then put
Oh,
you
I
a
see.
little earlier about.
After
Yes, I'll do that.
I'm
Sir,
in Bangalore, I'm a Kannadiga
sir you take about 6-7 minutes.
by thing, but
Yes, yes. Thank
apart
you.
from the 38 years in the
Very
government service, the rest of my life, Bangalore.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Sorry, sir. Bangara, sir, thank you for joining us, sir. You're muted, sir. Bangara, sir, you're muted.
Sorry. Good evening,
Yes.
Commander. How are you, sir? Everything okay?
Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining us. Yes, sir.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and I'm looking forward to some interesting webinar.
Sir, we have a very eminent panel today as well, sir. We have very senior people joining us.
It was good to note that you met General B.K. Sharma in Delhi.
Yes, sir. I think they are very serious about. In fact, General Pannu was also with him when we were meeting him.
Right.
And they are, as it is, deliberating very seriously on some of these issues.
Yes.
And it was just probably good timing that we
Correct.
were there, and so they're looking forward to working with us. So we are, I mean, more than looking forward to working with them. So
Right.
I think that should go off well. So that's my thought.
No, I'll be speaking to General Sharma on Monday because, as you know, that we are trying to put together to invite Admiral General Petraeus to come and talk.
Sure.
So we have General Venkatesh. Namaskara. Welcome.
Sir, thank you for joining us, sir.
Pleasure, sir. Pleasure. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for asking me to join this very important meeting.
Thank you so much, sir. Dr. Jere, sir, thank you for joining us. Atmanand, sir, General Venkatesh, sir, is VC Manipal University. You may be knowing him also.
Oh, yes, yes.
Dr. Atmanam is also there. Jere, sir, thank you for joining us. Abhay Jere, sir, Hiblikar, sir, is the Chief Innovation Officer of Ministry of Education. He is driving the Smart India Hackathon and various such innovation programs. Jere, sir, thank you for joining us, sir. We have some very eminent people. I may miss out introducing everybody.
Thanks. Really appreciate.
We are live now, sir.
Yeah. Okay.
Behel, sir, thank you for joining us, sir. Captain Behel, sir.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Behel, sir, would you like to do an audio check?
Checking 1, 2, 3, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, you're fine, sir. Thank you. We have about 150 plus registration. I think people will join in some time. Maybe in a minute's time, we'll start, sir.
Okay. No hurry, I think.
We have people, registrations from all across the world. We have people who have joined from Vietnam, from London, and even US also. So I think UDA is becoming more and more important. I mean, it was important, but I think people are now realizing the importance, and it's very heartening to see so many people participating in our webinars. Karthik, thank you for joining us.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Karthik, you're in Bangalore?
Triple IT.
Yes.
Yes, sir. He is in Bangalore.
Oh, wonderful.
Okay, I think we will start, sir. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I think this is another very important webinar in the series of webinars we do on looking at multiple aspects or multiple dimensions of the underwater domain awareness. We are happy to report that UDA is getting the importance that it deserves, and that's what we've been trying to push for the last 4.5 years. But now, even in Delhi, it is getting the importance, and we have been reaching out to multiple organizations, and now we are getting a lot of support. And this time I was in Delhi 3 days back, and we met a lot of senior people, and I think everybody understands and appreciates what it can do and how it can be taken forward. So we thank all of you for joining this webinar. And today we would be looking at the maritime governance aspect. We have a very, very eminent panel, senior scientists, senior geopolitical strategists, senior academicians, senior people from the military who understands strategic security aspects, and also we have people looking at the innovation aspects. I mean, people who have been driving hackathons and people who have been driving policy. I mean, we have people, senior person from Niti Aayog, advisor, science and technology, Neeraj Sinha sir. So I think it's a very well spread out panel. We have lawmaker also who have been involved in policy formulation, who've been part of the government mechanism for a very long time. So we are extremely grateful to all of you. I mean, this is a small effort from our side, but I think as we are, as time is going by, a lot of support is coming from various corners, and we feel very, very happy to see that this is getting the importance that it deserves. So, not taking much of your time, I would like to request, there's a slight change. Nalapad sir will be joining us a little late. So I have requested Pratap Heblikar sir, who is the managing trustee of Institute for Contemporary Studies, Bangalore. They have been looking at various internal security aspects, and sir himself has been part of the government system for over 38 years. And he has been part of multiple policy making as well as operational aspects. And I would request sir to give his opening remarks. And sir has been associated with us for a while, and sir understands what UDA is and what it can do. Sir, I would request you to kindly take over and make your opening remarks. Sir, kindly unmute yourself. Heblikar sir, kindly unmute yourself.
Thank you, Arnab, for the invitation to be here today. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I thank the Maritime Research Centre, Pune, and NirDhwani Technologies for the opportunity to share my thoughts on a subject of national importance. While I speak, I'm also like to mention that I also had a small think tank in Bangalore called the Institute of Contemporary Studies, Bangalore, which is a not-for-profit think tank, but we specialize mainly in
Hello, good afternoon, Commander.
Good afternoon, Mr. Talera. So we specialize in.
Hello, good afternoon, sir. Heblikar sir, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon. So just to say that, I thanked Arnab for the invitation, and I also thanked both MRC and NirDhwani Technologies for the opportunity to be here amongst all of you. And I think as I speak, and later on I will learn more from the experts who are present today. As I was saying that both MRC and the Institute of Contemporary Studies Bangalore have signed a memorandum of agreement recently to collaborate on subjects of national security. So having set the background, I would just like to start with a context to today's webinar. 2 days ago, along with two like-minded think tanks and the Rashtriya Raksha University, I co-hosted an international virtual seminar entitled Maneuvering the Minerals Market, China's Rare Earth Monopoly. We had people drawn from several sectors of the economy and international life. And also we looked at the various aspects of this subject, and we had the privilege of hosting fellow scholars from well-known academics and analysts from Australia, Japan, the EU, and Taiwan to speak on this subject. The China was the common thread in this particular webinar because it was a China-centric webinar, and it brought to the fore many of the commonalities that most of these countries have with India vis-a-vis China. It was not that we were driving at any particular anti-China alliance or a coalition of thing, but just to flag what is the threat, what is the challenge that emanates from China's rise, and in the last 2 years, where has it taken us and where has it taken China? So, in other words, the most important thing that our friends from the Quad countries and the EU made it very clear that India is the bulwark against any greater Chinese, advent into the Indian Ocean region or the Indo-Pacific region, and they would also like to collaborate with India in several of these fields. And the first and the most important field they touched upon was on the field of supply chain using the sea as a matter of commerce and trade. And I think there was a lot of common ideas that emerged. So at the end of the webinar, we all came to the conclusion that there was more than one reason for us to collaborate, and that we need to look at these things in a very, very focused manner. Having said this, I also touched upon the fact that the security environment in India's neighborhood has undergone significant changes in the last couple of months, especially the US decision to withdraw completely from Afghanistan, Chinese acquisition of influence in Myanmar, and also in Sri Lanka and the Maldives, and how India to its east is going to be seeing more developments that it needs careful attention, and how to create more opportunities to discuss with our neighbors, with the Quad partners and others to understand the depth of this problem and how we need to relate to it. That was the context to which we were looking at, and I think the context of today's webinar would perhaps be the same, because we are also looking at not only the maritime domain awareness, but also the underwater domain awareness. And that is here that this webinar is extremely important for us from a national security point of view. Ladies and gentlemen, what India today experiences in its national security structure is based on the vision of what Mrs. Gandhi had in 1968. And 53 years later, we find that her vision is now completely shared by people who are in power. And this BJP-led NDA government has brought more synergies into this mix so that we have a very strong national defense outlook. We have a strong national security policy. And also we are now creating more opportunities to look at things that we need to ensure that India is not left. India has not left anything unattended in its quest to create a huge national security doctrine for itself. But as I see, today India is in the midst of a major reorganization of its armed forces. India is now finally creating a national cybersecurity policy, and among others has been using the Atmanirbhar policy to strengthen its sinews of the comprehensive economic policy. Among all this, I think there are three factors that we need to really flag. One is that we need to create a awareness of India's national security interests and objectives. What are our tangible and intangible, concomitants of our national security policy? How do we articulate this, both within and outside the country? Secondly, how do we build capacity to understand these problems? As we now see that you have a major reorganization of the armed forces or the national cybersecurity policy, we need to see how all this is going to affect our ways the ways we are going to look to accept or defend ourselves against the threats and challenges that come our way. The third one is to have a clearer look at some areas which are causing us concern. For example, are there facilities for us to use Indian big tech or Indian national big tech to counter foreign domination of the vital telecom sector? Today, there is a great debate on how the Chinese have colonized, to say, India's telecom sector and are now in a position to control us to an extent that could be detrimental to our national security. If you have your finger on the button, you are creating more problems for us in the present and in the future. How do we overcome this problem? The second one is to look at the rapidly situation of the neighborhood which is causing us concern, especially to the east in Myanmar. Because today in Myanmar, apart from being China's shortcut to the Indian Ocean through the Irrawaddy River transit corridor, also contains a whole host of minerals which are vital to India's national security. The same can be said of the areas in Bangladesh which constitute some of the concurrent areas where we have rare earth and other materials which are of such significant interest to us. Then you have Sri Lanka and the Maldives, which are part of the Chinese strategy to move towards the Indian Ocean. So we have areas where we need considerable concern. And if we do not develop our systems in such a way that both the maritime domain awareness and the underwater domain awareness require a major fillip. And I think that's the direction that we need to look at. And as far as I look at it, I have always been an advocate of the government. It's not the only stakeholder in our national security formulations. As of many years ago, we have more stakeholders in the mix than what it was. We can no longer look at our national security in its traditional narrow military sense. Today, we have everybody else coming onto the platform, think tanks, then research organizations, then academics, think tanks like this, which create information which the government requires, and to help the government make its job simpler and easier. Apart from that, we have the corporate sector, which also needs to really be looking at where we are headed and what exactly is the role that they need to play in the national security considerations. Last but not the least, I think there's one aspect that we need to look at, and I hope that we will be able to do this in the next couple of months to look at how we can create the capacity building. We look at skills development, more R&D into this area, technology and collaboration. Collaboration both within the country and outside the country. And I think unless we do not give ourselves a timeline to achieve this, say by 2025, if achieve at least 20% of what we set out, I think we would have created much more scope for rapid economic and development of our system. I think, as I said in the last webinar we had just day before yesterday, the Quad is very interested in logging on to our systems in India. They find that there is commonality of approach, and we need to see how much we could hold their hands and get them into our fold and create more opportunities. I think this would be the area of trust, the area of consideration. And I think all of us, when we speak today, we need to see whether we can really focus on this thing. We are in the process of drawing up a report for the Government of India on the China minerals policy, and that will be shared with the Government of India before the Quad Summit takes place in September. I would urge Commander Arnab Das to kindly, if you can, prepare a 2 or 3 page report following this. We could also use it as a document to flag the attention of the government, the National Security Council Secretariat, which would be interested in this, and the other line ministries we have used. And then we could share it with some of our Quad partners for whatever traction we can get on this. At least with these few words, I would like to thank you for the opportunity once again and to wish everybody here a wonderful evening. Thank you very much. Jai.
Thank you so much, sir. It definitely gives us a very good start. And as you have very rightly brought out, sir, I think there is a lot of seriousness, both at the national level and also globally. And we at MRC are trying to do our bit to, first is create the awareness, sensitize people, and we're also at the back end working on multiple projects and multiple ideas. I would now like to talk about the core UDA framework as we are working on it, and draw your attention to the various projects that we are doing. So I would try and cover it under these heads. If you look at it, the 21st century global order is more and more coming towards the tropical waters. The pink region that you see. And this is a very, very different underwater scenario, and the typical underwater deployments do not work here. And the strategic relevance of the Indian Ocean and the South China Sea are well known. There are economical reasons, there are political reasons, and both of them combined together make it a very, very lethal mix for military interventions. And I think we are increasingly seeing more and more of submarine deployment. Even India also has taken it up very seriously. There was a plan for the third aircraft carrier, but now I think it is the submarine deployment or the submarine acquisition that has taken priority. So from that perspective, underwater domain awareness becomes the most important part. And in this, I would like to draw your attention toward the hardware versus the software debate. Unless we do significant R&D in our waters, we will not be able to kind of have effective acoustic survey or effective underwater domain awareness. And this has to be done indigenously. We cannot depend on somebody else because that has got significant strategic relevance. Now, if we look at, with all the strategic aspects, I think the Indo-Pacific has become globally the most strategic space. And if you look at the Indo-Pacific region as it is defined, it is the tropical waters of the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. So from a technical perspective, making our sonars work here should become the prime concern and prime focus. I mean, we are aware in the Navy that when we tested sonars when we acquired ships from the Russians and they were tested there, they gave us very good performance. But the same ship, so it is the hardware which is the same. So the same ship, when it sails and comes to our waters, the performance degrades significantly. So this is something we need to understand and really focus on while we want to plan our future in terms of our participation, or as I call it, the Indo part of the Indo-Pacific. The global community is taking us very seriously. I mean, even in the Quad, we are one of the 4 countries which are part of this global alliance. But we should not forget the Indo part of the Indo-Pacific, and we should not get drawn into it without the adequate preparation or without the adequate capacity building. And it is everybody's business. I mean, as Heblikar sir also mentioned, I mean, there is so much that we need to work on and prepare for that unless we have a very, very nuanced approach, we will not be able to. We have some very senior panelists, I mean, from the scientific community, from the innovation community. They would be anyway talking about certain things. But I would like to draw your attention. I mean, India's position in the Indian Ocean is again something which we can't run away from. I mean, and it is the only country which has got an ocean named after it. So it is important that we take it more seriously than probably what we have done so far. So just to look at the regional and local dynamics, if you look at the countries in the region, pre-modern states, so India has to play an important role. I mean, socio-economically, there are challenges. Political stability is a huge challenge. So security becomes an issue. Non-state actors have been extremely active, and even some states are using them as a regular instrument of their state policy. So it's a very fragmented geopolitics. The nations within the region are not united. So extra-regional powers are finding it very easy to meddle into our internal affairs and ensure that safe, secure, sustainable growth is not allowed. I mean, in some sense, I mean, safe is safety from natural disasters, security is from any man-made threat, and sustainability is on all fronts. It is not limited to ecology alone. And of course, growth is something we all look forward to. And the nations within the region have to look at it very differently. And maritime is something where it cannot be a national policy. It has to be a regional outlook. From a sustainability perspective, if you look at the Kuznets curve, we all know how it pans out. I mean, initially, when a country is in the growth path, the degradation is also very high. But I think today in India, we are on the first dotted line where it should start stabilizing. And that can happen only if we have sound regulatory framework and monitoring mechanism. Underwater, the monitoring mechanism is a bigger challenge. Probably you can draw out some regulations, but monitoring mechanism is the bigger challenge. And this is where an effort is required where everybody can come together. I mean, many of the developing nations suffer from these binaries, development versus security, environment versus development. I mean, you may find that agencies within the government itself are not able to synergize because there are aspects that they are not able to kind of reconcile. So we need to look at a very, very different approach. And another very important thing is post the Cold War, there has been a significant shift in the way we look at technology development. I mean, during the Cold War, I think it was a golden era when significant technology development happened. I mean, I don't want to give the list, but the entire, even from an underwater perspective, the technology development happened that time because it was military led. There were no questions asked in terms of funding and also in terms of the environmental clearances. I mean, for a national security project, everything was given. But I think post the Cold War situation is different. It is politically not viable to have unquestioned funding or even waivers for environmental aspects. So democracies have their challenges because we need to balance. I won't say it is a challenge. I mean, we need to balance multiple factors, and within that, those constraints we'll have to work. So balancing the binaries, and still we have to evolve a sustainable growth model. So what is a comprehensive framework that we can look at? I mean, sometimes we feel that security should be given a priority, but in a democracy, you need to balance so many other factors as well. So India in the 21st century, if we look at it, some of the challenges, I mean, if I may use the word, or even opportunities. I mean, water resource management is a challenge. I'll elaborate a little bit on that. There are water quality management is an issue. Sagar vision, it's a very, very ambitious declaration at the apex level. But what are the ground level nuances which we need to focus on? And I'll try and cover some of them today. And mega projects like Sagarmala, Bharatmala has been announced. But are young India or young people able to participate? Are they capable enough? I mean, it's sometimes very sad to see that mega projects are being driven by foreign vendors and even foreign kind of talent. So why are people not able to participate and do good for themselves and contribute to the national development? I mean, aspirational India, but how do we make sure that they are ready for the big wave? I mean, water resource management, there's a projection for 2030. The supply demand gap is increasing, and if something is not done, I think there are going to be huge challenges in many ways. I mean, water resource management is a huge subject, but there's a lot of underwater domain awareness that is required, and then only we'll be able to optimize or effectively and efficiently manage the water resource. To add to that is the water quality management. I mean, if you see this map, I mean, these are not our own research. This has been taken from open source. You can see that the water quality is becoming a huge challenge. Already it is in a bad state, and it is only getting worse. I mean, both chemical as well as biological contamination is something very, very worrisome. And the proposal I would like to make is that both water quality and water resource management have to be done in a synergized way. Otherwise, we are just wasting, we are not getting the right quality, and we are wasting a whole lot of high quality water for low quality jobs or low quality applications. So now, in terms of capacity building, when we talk about UDA, there are a whole lot of issues. I mean, whole lot of projects that are there. Inland water transport is a huge opportunity, but our young India has to be prepared for it, and the capacity building is required. Blue economic growth, there is huge potential. Lot more is being done by the government, but on the ground, are our people or the young India aware what the opportunities are and what the capacity gaps are exist, and how they can kind of be up to it? Sediment management is another huge area. I think we won't have time. I'm just flagging these areas which need to be looked at. Water quality I've talked about, and how do we bring, I mean, sometimes you feel that multiple agencies of the government and in the private sector are working in cross purposes. I mean, how do we reconcile all these things, and how do we build a policy ecosystem where everybody can synergize? I mean, this is a very, very simple project we did, and this has got so many applications. I mean, this is based on the AIS data, which gives you the details of the shipping traffic. We made a underwater noise map. So you can see the spatio-temporal differences, and the map that we have found, and it's a real-time map. It can be updated every 5 minutes. So you get a sense of how the noise is underwater. And if you look at the applications, one is the complete policy making in terms of the environmental conservation. The second is even from a military purpose. Basically, any underwater deployment can use this kind of a thing, even to the extent of aquaculture. This can be used. So it is basically a digital ocean formulation, and if we can digitize the ocean, there is so much more thing that we can do. Now, how bad it is, now we are seeing increasingly stranding incidents in the Indian coast, in the west coast, and even in the east coast. So, I mean, it is definitely a manifestation of a catastrophic ecosystem degradation. So we have to take this aspect very seriously. In 2016, the Maharashtra coast alone, 720 kilometers, saw 80 big whale strandings in just 1 year. I mean, this is a result of an RTI that was put up. So I think it's a very, very serious issue. And if you go back to this map, you can make out how bad it is on the west coast. And these marine mammals depend on sound to perceive the environment around them. Now, maritime domain awareness is a formulation that can provide solutions for enhancing maritime governance. But typically what has happened, the conventional understanding or the conventional definition of maritime domain awareness has been an event-driven formulation. I mean, globally, it was after the 9/11, and in India, it was after the 26/11 that a lot of focus, policy focus came into MDA. But unfortunately, it remained a security-driven formulation. So participation of the other stakeholders, whether it is blue economy or environmental regulators and disaster management authorities or the scientific community, science and technology, they somehow got left out. And that's why, and you cannot expect the defense budget to fund everything. I mean, capacity building has to be done at a very different scale. So how do we make sure that this can be done in a comprehensive way? And somehow we have found that the scientific community also, whether it is defense or the non-defense applications, have not been able to come together. So we are trying to kind of push forward that the focus has to be on science and technology, and how do we make that happen. So if you look at the stakeholders of UDA, I mean, as we have discussed, going forward, there is definitely a security requirement of detecting submarines, or how we can deploy our own submarines effectively. There's a lot more that can be done and should be done. We had this incident, 26/11 incident. Migration is going to be a huge challenge. So there are multiple security challenges, and even blue economic aspects of energy, food, security. Everywhere there is a security angle also. So I think we have to look at it very differently. And I mean, fishing is a very, very important area, but I think there's a lot more work to be done. Deep sea mining is a very important area. There's a lot of focus, but I think it has to become a much bigger mass participation kind of an activity, so that we get more and more people who understand what this is, and they can become part of the larger initiative that is being done. I mean, there are organizations, scientific communities who are, or government scientific agencies who have been doing a lot of work. But unless it becomes a mass kind of a movement, I mean, more and more people, more academic curriculum are coming into the academia, we will not be able to take advantage of our position right now. I mean, our aspiration of becoming a 5 trillion economy and then going beyond, I think will be better served if we are able to get a whole of nation approach. Again, as we talked about environment and disaster management, I think this is self-explanatory. We are increasingly seeing these ugly episodes which are going to take us back. The last but not the least is science and technology. Our understanding of the underwater ecosystem, our deployment of technology to generate the UDA, how we can build smart systems, how we can ensure that effective and efficient systems are put in place. I don't think we can afford, I mean, it's a 20 lakh square kilometer of area that we are talking about. If we just consider the EZ, I mean, can we put sensors all across? I don't think so. So how do we build smart systems? How do we involve various agencies to contribute to the larger picture is something we need to look at. And this has to be a whole of nation approach, and probably a region specific approach rather than so we will be able to get a lot more resources and a lot more synergy across the region. This is the framework that we have proposed. If you look at the horizontal construct, all the 4 phases will have their own specific requirement. But I think acoustic capacity building will remain the core and will require a lot more focus and attention. And if you look at the vertical construct, a lot of sensing is required. I think we ourselves don't understand too much about our underwater space. So a lot more sensing is required, analysis, and then we should be looking at regulation. Sometimes it is the other way. It is a top-down approach. We import the policy framework from somewhere which does not match our condition, and then we give waivers, and somehow we lose sight of what is to be done. And even from a young India perspective, you can see this cube. You will find that we can organize the involvement in a much more better manner, and whether it is a startup idea or whether it is our young people adequately building their capability to contribute, everything can be answered by this cube, and we can take this forward. We have approached the Niti Aayog, and Niti Aayog has considered our request, and I think we will be getting on with our first project of the first draft. I mean, just to now take forward the larger cube into smaller areas like underwater radiated noise management. I mean, there is a naval requirement of acoustic stealth, but the same technology or same issues are also relevant for acoustic habitat degradation. MRC has been fortunate that our paper has gone to IMO, and now IMO has formulated a committee where we have also been included. So we should be able to contribute to the global policy making for underwater radiated noise management. And shipping industry, ship design and shipbuilding also needs to take note of this, and various aspects need to be kind of covered there. Similarly, I mean, here you can see pooling of resources and synergizing of effort across multiple stakeholders. Even sediment classification is something very, very important, whether it is port management or inland water transport or water resource management for freshwater management for there, and also certain military requirements of deployment across water bodies or various other applications also. The same set of technology are relevant, and the same set of acoustic capacity building are relevant, and we need to do a lot of work there. Just to give a user academia industry partnership, you can see the funnel. There are multiple government initiatives now. If we can position ourselves correctly, we will be able to take advantage, get the right support from the government, and even certain core areas if we work on, and we will be able to contribute to the right policy framework, the technology and innovation, and also the capacity building that is required. And you can see the various stakeholders who are there, and all of them can benefit, and we can also drive this in a very, very effective manner. We are reaching out to all the stakeholders, and we are happy to report that we've been getting very, very positive response from most of them. And now I think the government is also looking at it from a policy perspective. And so we were very, very encouraged to take this forward now. Now, MRC has been doing various projects. I think there's not much of time to elaborate on that, but our website has got all the details. We have tried to touch upon various areas. We're getting the support of the senior policy makers and also scientific community and also academicians. So we are now working with various agencies to take this forward. Task at hand is well known. So the way ahead is national capacity and capability building. Niti Aayog has been very kind, and they've involved. Even we have been our policy paper on national security also has been taken up, and we are scheduled to make a presentation to the NSA himself. We have met all the senior security authorities, right from the Chief of Defense Staff to Army Chief, Navy Chief, Defense Secretary, and various deputy NSAs and senior people in the NSA's office. And we are very optimistic that this will definitely get the support. We have started working on Center of Excellences, which is basically a user academia industry partnership, and stakeholder consolidation has been reasonably good as of now, and we are getting more and more support, everybody coming in, and it is a win-win for all. I mean, why should every stakeholder look at their own capacity building? I mean, why can't we have a national approach to it? And that's what the Skill India program is all about. And we have also signed an MOU with them. So way forward is policy intervention, technology intervention, capacity building, site-specific R&D, because our areas are different and we need to take note of that. A multidisciplinary and multifunctional approach. So we have proposed this inter-university center. I'm likely to make a presentation to the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Education. And this is our single point agenda to request them that we should consider IUC for underwater domain awareness. And this will have those 5 different sub-centers or 5 different centers so that we can drive it very, very comprehensively. So thank you. I think just to set the tone, and we have a very, very distinguished panel. I would now request Professor Atmanand sir to, he has been involved in this for many decades now. Sir retired as the director of NIO, and to introduce him, I would like to mention only one important aspect, that sir has been instrumental in getting the Oceans Conference, the biggest underwater conference, to India. It has been, I think, more than 2 decades of effort by sir, and I'm happy that this has happened, because it's a very big conference, and getting it to India to manage the whole ecosystem has not been so easy. Sir has significant contribution as a scientist, and sir, I would request you to kindly make your presentations.
Thank you very much, Dr. Arnab Das. It is really a pleasure to be here. So let me address Dr. Hebliker, Dr. Arnab Das, Dr. M.D. Nalapat in absentia, other dignitaries present online. It is really my pleasure to talk to you about my perspective as an ocean technologist on challenges in the Indo-Pacific, the underwater domain awareness dimension. I happen to be the chair of the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, Regional Committee for Central Indian Ocean Basin, IOC Indio, till recently, and I am a member of the Decade Advisory Board for the preparation of the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development 2021-2030. With this background, I would like to touch upon the challenges in blue economy implementation and the importance of the Indian Ocean in this part of the world. The Earth is a blue planet with 71% of its 510 million square kilometer surface covered by marine waters, with an average depth of 4 times the average elevation of the land. Life originated in the ocean, which continues to support all life today by generating oxygen, absorbing carbon dioxide, recycling nutrients, and regulating global climate and temperature. Oceans provide a substantial portion of the global population with food and livelihoods, means of transport for 80% of global trade, 32% of the global supply of hydrocarbons, with exploration expanding rapidly. Advancing technologies are opening new frontiers of marine resources development, from bioprospecting to the mining of seabed mineral resources. Oceans also offer vast potential for renewable energy production from wind, wave, tidal, thermal, and biomass sources. Managing the ocean economy is in an eco-friendly manner is today's imperative. Indian Ocean region has almost the half of world's population residing on its coast. The Indian Ocean is warming more than the other oceans. Loss of beaches and thereby tourism potential is important in the Indian Ocean region. The IOC Regional Committee for Central Indian Ocean, IOC Indio, the regional subsidiary body of IOC, has the member states as Australia, Bangladesh, France, India, Indonesia, Iraq, Islamic Republic of Iran, Kuwait, Malaysia, Maldives, Myanmar, Oman, Pakistan, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Sri Lanka, Thailand, United Arab Emirates, and the United Kingdom. All the countries are Indian Ocean Rim countries. Efforts are on to expand the IOC Indio to an IOC subcommission with members from all other Indian Ocean Rim. The oceans economy, also referred to as the blue economy, is a relatively new concept that has its origins in the green economy concept endorsed at the UN Conference on Sustainable Development held in Rio de Janeiro in 2012, aimed at significantly reducing environmental and ecological risks. At its core, blue economy refers to the decoupling of the socio-economic development from environmental degradation, efficient and optimal utilization of natural marine resources. The concept of a blue economy also embodies economic and trade activities that integrate the conservation and sustainable use and management of biodiversity, including maritime ecosystems and genetic resources. In addition, it includes activities that are not natural resource intensive, support sustainable patterns of consumption, and generate lower or no greenhouse gas emissions. It also seeks to contribute to mitigation and adaptation methods to address climate change risks manifested in the rise of the sea level and the acidification of seawater. Additionally, the blue economy approach supports sustainable livelihoods and food security for coastal populations. Establishing effective governance for the blue economy is essential for creating and regulating a sustainable balance between the utilization of marine resources and the protection of marine ecosystems. This is also the major challenge. Globally, about 350 million jobs are linked to the oceans through fishing, aquaculture, coastal and marine tourism, and research activities. Moreover, about 1 billion people depend on fish as their primary food. Overexploitation and poor management of marine resources result in loss of opportunities, heightened food insecurity, and diminished economic opportunities for some of the world's poorest people. The framework agreement governing the management of the oceans is provided by the 1982 United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, which establishes a comprehensive framework for the use and development of the oceans. The convention defines the extent of various jurisdictional zones delineated according to distance from coastlines based on set baselines and sets out the rights and obligations of countries regarding those zones. Countries have sovereignty over their internal waters, territorial seas, and archipelagic waters, and sovereign rights over the resources in their exclusive economic zone, EEZ, and the seafloor of their continental shelf. These zones represent about 30% of all ocean areas. Major features of UNCLOS include the conservation and management of living marine resources, rights on seabed non-living resources, obligation to protect and preserve the marine environment, navigational rights, legal status of resources on the seabed beyond the limits of national jurisdiction, the conduct and promotion of marine scientific research, and a procedure for settlement of disputes between states. For coastal countries, oceans and seas constitute a much larger geographic area than their inland territory, especially when the EEZ is taken into account. I can give a glimpse of the activities taken up by some of the Indian Ocean rim countries. In Bangladesh, discussions on the blue economy accelerated after the settlement of the maritime boundary delimitation dispute with Myanmar and India. The proliferation of marine resources in the maritime area offers Bangladesh scope for sustainable economic development. Bangladesh considers blue economy as one of the important tools available for achieving sustainable development, since the concept of the blue economy has become a new trend of alternate economic models of sustainable development that puts the oceans at its center. Blue economy has become an integral part of the post-2015 development agenda and also has become an important tool for achieving Vision 2021 of becoming a middle income country and Vision 2041 of becoming a developed one. They have identified 9 priority sectors that are mostly untapped and require proper attention from all stakeholders. The Bangladesh National 8th Five-Year Plan 2020 to 2025 embraced blue economy and acknowledged the idea that transition to blue economy would entail fundamental and systematic changes in their policy, regulatory, management, governance frameworks, and identification of various maritime economic functions. India, which has a land space of approximately 3.29 million square kilometers, has a coastal EEZ of 2.3 million square kilometers and is likely to increase with the additional claim made on the continental shelf extension till 350 nautical miles. Therefore, sustainable harvesting of marine resources presents a significant opportunity for environmentally sound, socially inclusive economic growth, development, and welfare of populations. A strong blue economy proposal prepared by Niti Aayog is under discussion with all stakeholders before finalization and implementation. It is also worth mentioning that a major program of deep ocean mission has been embarked by the Government of India, which is being executed by the Ministry of Earth Sciences and its institute, National Institute of Ocean Technology at Chennai. The blue economy, which in Iran is often known as sea-based development, is one of the topics of interest to the government and the private sector. There are particular incentive policies for it. Among the principal axes of this issue, the most consideration and investments have been made in tourism and marine ecosystem. Iran enjoys several islands in the north of the Persian Gulf, some of which have excellent tourist attractions, especially from October to April. Regarding marine aquaculture, the cage culture has been developed by considering environmental concerns. The issue of marine biomaterials has been studied at academic institutions with some commercial outcomes. In the two sectors of marine renewable energy and mineral resources, several studies are currently being carried out, which are hoped to lead to sustainable industrialization in the future. Iraq economy has the export of oil and gas and the associated establishment of oil and gas derivatives, refineries, the establishment of petrochemicals, and the obtaining of financial resources, factories, production of renewable energy from water, as these water resources have enormous power to operate production engines in an environmentally friendly manner in pursuit of sustainable development from cheap resources that achieve self-sufficiency in electric energy. Production of mineral water and fresh water and related industry from the manufacture of plastic containers achieve high financial revenues. The strategic framework and policies that constitute the blue economy serve as a valuable resource for the state of Kuwait. Particularly, the blue economy supports Kuwait in its efforts to achieve sustainable marine economic activities and develop novel maritime-based technologies. Importantly, Kuwait needs to diversify its sources of income and revenue, and the blue economy offers avenues for Kuwait to sustainably and lucratively exploit local natural marine resources in an environmentally conscious manner. Relevant blue economy sectors that Kuwait is currently working on developing include fisheries and aquaculture, marine bioprospecting, desalination, transport and trade, tourism, recreation, and coastal development. Additionally, Blue economy related activities indirectly contribute to the Kuwaiti economy and the environmental preservation through initiatives such as the Blue Carbon Initiative, coastal protection, including habitat protection and restoration, marine biodiversity maintenance like protection of species and habitats, and proper waste disposal, including assimilation of nutrients and solid waste. Qatar is the only peninsular country of the Arabian Gulf with rich and diverse marine biological and mineral resources. It attracts migratory species, example dugongs and whale sharks, in hundreds annually. The fishery and oil industries are the major contributing factors to the local economy. Qatar Ministry of Municipality and Environment is preparing a national conservation and management plan for sustainable utilization of marine resources. Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030 was initiated as a far-sighted approach for economic growth and development in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. As part of Vision 2030, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has placed different plans to enhance the non-oil revenues by diversifying the economy. The Red Sea and Arabian Gulf resources present huge opportunities for increasing Saudi economic growth and social development, especially the tourism and aquaculture sectors, and tackle unemployment rates, poverty, and food security. The blue economy approach in Saudi Arabia aims for the improvement of human well-being and significantly reducing environmental and ecological degradation. Ultimately, introducing the blue economy concept means inclusion and participation of all affected social groups and governmental and private sectors. Many marine resources are not only targeted for catering to the local demand, but exported as raw materials, intermediates, or final products. And the demand for goods and services originating in the oceans is likely to increase as populations continue to grow. Trade in marine products can create opportunities for economic growth, export diversification, and new investments. Moreover, as technology evolves and marine resources become more accessible, new economic and trade sectors are also likely to emerge, potentially generating new job opportunities. Major trade sectors include sustainable fishing and aquaculture, marine transport services and port management, marine renewable energy, marine bioprospecting and biotechnology, regulated seabed mineral resource extraction, and coastal tourism. Trade in these marine sectors can be boosted by introducing sound regulatory and institutional frameworks to develop ancillary services needed to undertake these activities, including financial, insurance, communications, testing and certification, and R&D activities, which are all challenging to implement. Regulatory frameworks are an enabling factor in the promotion of sustainable activities, moving production in ecologically friendly goods from niche market segments to mainstream international trade, thus responding to evolving consumer demand. To conclude, the catchword in the blue economy is sustainability. It is hence essential to take up activities in renewable energy, sustainable fishing, tourism, shore protection, beach nourishment, etc. effectively. Marine spatial planning and coastal vulnerability assessment are also to be taken up in the coastal states. Let me urge, before concluding, let me urge all of you to participate at the IEEE MTS Oceans Conference to be held in India for the first time from the 21st to 24th February 2021. This is going to be held at Chennai, and it's a hybrid event, and I have sent the details available in the website, which has been shared in the chat box. Thank you very much once again for giving me an opportunity to participate in this event and share my thoughts. Very specifically, I would like to thank Dr. Arnab for giving me this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. I think it was a very insightful perspective on the underwater research and the various scientific activities in the country and beyond. And definitely, sir, the oceans is a very big thing that is going to happen next year. And I think all of us should definitely try and participate in whatever way we can. I mean, thank you very much, sir. I would now request Dr. Abhay Jere, sir, to kindly make his presentation. Jere sir has been driving the unique Smart India Hackathon for some time now, and this is a very unique initiative under the Smart India program. And I think the Startup India initiative of the Government of India is being taken up very, very seriously at the top level, what I understand, and we would like to know more from sir how even the underwater domain awareness framework could participate in the Smart India program or the hackathon initiative of the Government of India, because I think there is a lot more. I mean, if we just look at the land and the maritime part of it, it's almost equal. I mean, if you just look at the EZ. So I think there is a lot more contribution that can come from the maritime sector, and particularly the underwater has a huge potential. And we would like to know from sir how this can be made part of it, and how the Government of India looks at this innovation aspect, and what are the various opportunities young India can participate. Please, your presentation, sir.
Thank you, Arnabji, for giving me this opportunity. To be honest, to all the listeners here, I called when this program started and everybody started talking about underwater awareness. I said, I'm a complete misfit here. And Arnabji said, no, you're not, because we want to hear about innovation aspects which government is doing and how two things could be collaborated, how we can join some of these initiatives. But yes, I'm listening to all the discussions with great interest. And when I'm listening to these such passionate people, I believe I'm quite naive in all these sectors, quite naive in this area. I have learned a lot in last 1 year, 1 hour. Never had any awareness about this dimension and how critical this sector is. So it's a wonderful Saturday for me. Learn something very new from you all. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Basically, I am Chief Innovation Officer for Ministry of Education, and I work with educational institutions. And the primary agenda for me, my team, is to promote innovation, entrepreneurship amongst our young population, amongst our students, amongst our faculty members, so that we will be able to create startups which are globally competitive. We will be able to create ideas, generate ideas which are globally relevant. Because till date, you also know that in majority of our educational institutions, and we can say almost in all, still there is huge focus on marks, grades, numbers, and people chase these grades and marks and don't chase ideas. So we are trying to change this by telling our professors, by telling our students that yes, it's great that you are pursuing Saraswati, you're worshipping Saraswati, but also explore the possibility of worshipping Lakshmi simultaneously. So for me, when I'm looking at research, when I'm looking at innovation, the definitions are very simple. For me, research is conversion of wealth into knowledge, new knowledge. And innovation is conversion of that knowledge back into wealth. So I'm, through Ministry of Education, try to promote this thought process within our educational institutions, that let's apply the knowledge which we have created in critical sectors. And to be very honest with you, blue economy is one of the very important sectors for us. Arnabji talked about Smart India Hackathon. But recently, we actually went ahead and organized India ASEAN Hackathon. And the entire theme of this India ASEAN Hackathon was blue economy, cyber security. We had problem statements coming from Coastal Guard Department, Coast Guard Department, then inquiries. Then we had problem statement from Ministry of Shipping, National Institute of Oceanography. We had about 15 problem statements which were there. And many of them were related to maritime security, how to prevent piracy, how to detect a ship, unauthorized ship. And all the jury members which were there for this hackathon, and it was an India ASEAN hackathon. So 11 countries joined. All the 11 countries participated. And the kind of ideas which came up from these youngsters, please don't misunderstand. I don't understand much about this field. But some of the jury members who were senior commanders and some of the academicians working in this area for 15 years, 20 years, told us that the kind of solutions our youngsters have proposed, the kind of algorithms which they have proposed, the kind of tools which they have developed, they were trying to work on it for last 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and our youngsters, bright youngsters, could do it in 2 months, 3 months, 3.5 months. They were simply stunned. They were simply stunned. I was also surprised to hear such comments from some of the really leading experts which were evaluating these proposals. But it gave me a confidence that even in this such a niche area, if we join hands, then we will be able to create solutions which are state of art, which are relevant. Many people may think, I don't know, I directly jumped onto India ASEAN Hackathon, but I don't know many people are aware what hackathon is. Basically, in simple terms, hackathon is a methodology to bootstrap an idea. It's in a quick and dirty way. Usually the term is applied to software, but now it is getting expanded. We are doing a lot of hardware also development in it, but it's a quick and iterative way to test your idea. And in that, you don't create a PowerPoint presentation, but you actually build a product in 36 hours, in 48 hours, in 72 hours, or in 5 days, depending upon the format. And the product has to work. You know, it may not have all the features, but the core function has to be there. It has to work. You cannot just say it will work. And our students are really great in currently doing some of these things. Because in India, we have 80 lakh students at any given time point, which are just doing technology across 10,000 plus institutions. And if you really look at the amount of time which they can actually give or spend, then it's enormous. Because every student has to do a 6 months project in his 3 years or 4 years of his academic course to get his degree. So if you do some back of the envelope calculation, just a small back of the envelope calculation, the amount of time which gets invested, it's about 3.5 lakh to 5.5 lakh, 6 lakh person year per year. It's huge. It's a time required for human evolution. And that amount of energy gets invested every year. And what happens? But it all goes down the drain because large number of copy pasting happens. People just copy projects or buy projects. But there are about 15 to 20% students who are really keen on doing good projects. They want to do good projects, but they don't get that opportunity to do it. And they end up working on theoretical aspects, which could be sometimes very non-relevant, not required. And collaborations with institutes like yours will be of immense help to this large number of students who are keen on doing good projects, but don't know which problems to solve. So India is at a very unique kind of a position, where on one side, we have millions of problems which really require solutions. And majority of the problems don't require rocket science kind of solutions. And on the other side, we have millions of students who are technologists. But currently, unfortunately, we are not bringing them together at a scale. In some pockets, yes, those things are certainly happening. Premier institutions like IITs, NITs, IIITs are doing these things. But at the end of the day, these are just 100 institutions. And 99% of our students are in tier 2, tier 3 organizations. And the students which are in IITs, NITs, IIITs, they are brainy, undoubtedly, because they have gone through a very, very good selection process. But it need not mean that they are out-of-box thinkers. And even if you go to the worst college, tier 4 college in this country, there also you will find about 10 to 15% students who are really good, but are unfortunately not getting the national platform to showcase their talent. So what we really need to do here is get many more organizations like you together and explore the possibility of how we can use this young raw talent which is out there, give them right kind of projects to solve so that they also become technically competent and not just end up doing something which is just theoretical. We are also collaborating with multiple institutions for such hackathons. Recently, as part of Atmanirbhar Bharat, I was leading the Toycathon, which was launched, where we challenged our youngsters to come up with toys based on Indian ethos. Prime Minister personally interacted with them. And the kind of toys our youngsters could suggest, our youngsters could develop board games, card games, phenomenal. We were simply zapped. It means there is huge amount of creativity that is there. We have to just unearth it. But we are not just saying that we are going to focus on these low-hanging fruits. And soon we are going to announce a hackathon with Ministry of Home Affairs, BPR&D, where we are going to get into real good cyber security. We are going to announce about 20 problem statements. Very, very critical for Ministry of Home Affairs. And again, we'll be challenging our youngsters to explore how they can come up with kind of solutions which government can use directly. Because as working with ministry, that is a good advantage for me. I can push the partnering ministry to actually work with these youngsters directly. And our partnership with ISRO, our partnership with BAE, our partnership with BARC has worked out quite well. The reason is there are scientists and technocrats at the other end also. And they understand the value of what these youngsters can do for them. So I believe that with organization like yours can certainly come forward, join hands with us, come up with 5, 10, 15 problem statements. You have to just give prizes to the students who are coming up with great solutions. Also, you need to ensure that you collaborate with a relevant ministry so that if there is a really good solution which has a future, then it can be logically taken forward. Because many times we have ideas, we clap, but then nothing happens. Nothing moves forward. And we have to avoid this because it actually proves detrimental to these youngsters. It affects their mindsets negatively. कि इसमें कुछ होता ही नहीं. So I have spoken this possibility with Arnab ji quite elaborately back. And we will be happy to explore how we can join hands so that we can reach out to our youngsters within our domain, technology youngsters, domain experts within our capacity, and challenge them to work for national security, challenge them to work for maritime security, and explore how these solutions could be logically used for our national development and national security. So with this, I will stop here. I know I have not added much value to this webinar because I'm not as learned as you all are in this sector. But yes, I will be more than happy moving forward to learn more from you, to get knowledge from you, so that I will able to do my bit for this sector in due course of time. Thank you very much. Namaskar. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Abhijji. I think last time when we had discussed and we had a very elaborate discussion, you had accused me of being very passionate. I think the audience here also understands how passionate you are. And I think the Smart India Hackathon and the innovation drive of the Government of India has been taken to a very different level because of your involvement. And certainly, sir, our last discussion, now I think in the last few months, a lot more has happened in terms of the UDA. The Government of India has also initiated a lot of things. It is just about we probably coming together and getting down to the details and working it out. Thank you so much for joining us. And I think what you said is very, very important. And we take note of every bit that you have spoken about. And when our proposal formally comes to you, it will try and address everything that you mentioned. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you so much. Neeraj Sinha sir from Niti Aayog is, I think, not able to join because of some last minute problems. I will now request General Venkatesh sir, Vice Chancellor of Manipal University, to kindly make his presentation. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us. I think it is a very different combination of a military leader and now driving an academic institution of real repute. I mean, I don't think I need to talk about the university that you head now. Significant contribution, and we do look forward to working with you and take this forward. You are located very well. You have the right ecosystem, and we look forward to working with you, sir. Please make your presentation, sir. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Commander Arnab Das. At the outset, warm greetings from Manipal Academy of Higher Education, an institution of eminence deemed to be university, to all those people who are present here in this webinar. And at a personal level, thanks to Commander Arnab Das for inviting me to be part of this very unique webinar. And the concept of underwater domain awareness definitely was a little new to me, because I was aware of maritime domain awareness to a certain extent. But I think this new dimension, and after having heard some of the most eloquent speakers before me, has widened my horizon and deepened my understanding on these issues. And at the outset, let me compliment Commander Das for conceptualizing and driving Maritime Research Centre and NirDhwani technologies. I went through the concept note, I went through the document that you have shared with me. I think it's eminently, it's applaudable that such an adventure has taken place, and such a committed effort is going on towards highlighting the need for underwater domain awareness and taking this concept forwards, and also involving multiple stakeholders in understanding and in promoting and taking the future directions towards underwater domain awareness. And as we have seen, some of the important things that I made a note of is about the importance of underwater domain awareness in strategic maritime economy, in terms of prevention and mitigation of natural disasters. Underwater environment was something which made a huge impact on me when some of you spoke about it. And of course, the geopolitical and international relations angle of underwater domain awareness and maritime domain awareness. And to this end, I think I'm very, very happy that I was part of this discussion, and I learned a lot today. And I also saw that there is a humongous scope for collaboration and cooperation between multidisciplinary universities like ours, and which with people who think strategic think tanks and centers like yours, Dr. Arnab, and also public and private sector undertaking, how we can make rapid progress with regard to many of these issues in terms of academic collaborations, and in terms of technology collaborations, in terms of industry academia collaboration, in terms of, just now I was it was great listening to Dr. Abhay as a head of technology innovations of Ministry of Human Resource Development. And Mahe was in the forefront last year that we hosted the Smart India Hackathon for the entire duration of its this thing. So things are, today I was extremely pleased. And just to highlight some of the important aspects of academia industry partnership in any of these newer developmental areas, I'd like to highlight, just to bring to the notice of the August gathering here, that the partnership between academia and industry has proven to be effective in catalyzing innovation and growth for both the industry and the academia and the users thereof. Although such collaborations are common in developed countries, in a country, ours it is still in infancy. Industry is definitely not utilizing the kind of resources that academic institution possess, especially with regard to young, innovative mind that are teeming in our educational institutions. So this is earliest we make an endeavor to get these people involved in developmental processes and research and developmental activities in terms of finding solution to simple and complex problems. The economy of the country will see an upward trend quite soon. An example to look at how the Harvard MIT cluster in US, the Golden Triangle of Cambridge University, Imperial College of London, and University College of London in Europe are examples of academia coming together with partnering with various industries, and they look at the economic benefits that these partnerships have brought to the world. In India, more and more frequent academic industry collaborations are absolutely essential. See, we need to look at industries and users looking towards our institutions and seeking to find solutions to their research problems. This is where the innovation will come. This is where cost-effective products will develop. This is where cost-effective services will develop. And also from job seekers, many of our students will become job providers, which is perhaps would be a great thing to happen to a country like ours, where millions of people are looking for opportunities to earn a living. And the co-development and the co-creation model of academia industry will be mutually beneficial, and there'll be enough opportunities for both to share the fortunes of the outcome. And that is where the importance of cooperation, collaboration, creation of new knowledge through partnership will lead to new product, new processes, new services, and definitely make life easier for the community and the society that we live in. Looking at where academic institutions like ours can contribute to ideas with Dr. Arnab and the center are doing, and all the senior speakers who addressed us before this have looked about. I think I'm clearly looking at two areas where there can be very quick and early partnerships that from academic institutions like ours and strategic think tank like yours can immediately take forward to. One is at the academic level, and I've already spoken to our head of the department of geopolitics and international relations, Dr. Nandakishore. I'm sure he'll be getting in touch with you, Dr. Arnab, very soon. And we look forward to collaborating and cooperating with you, looking at establishing geopolitical research and maybe even programs and courses for capacity building as we go forward. Second issue which has struck me is the kind of the facilities and the resources that the institutions like ours have, and the opportunities the industry and the users, both in the public sector and the private sector, can make use of. In fact, research in the field of acoustics, sonars, digital signal processing, precision engineering and instrumentation, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and big data, cybersecurity in underwater environment and technology, especially with economic focus on underwater cable systems and their control systems, and also energy transmission lines like underwater, and of course the protection and the national security of our economic zone. And some of the newer things that we can seriously look at in cooperating with the industry and research organization within the public sector and the private sector are underwater robotics, unmanned underwater vehicles, design and simulation of many, many complex problems, and simulation, as we've all seen, can find quicker solutions rather than conventional R&D as we look forward to. And of course, innovation and entrepreneurship. And that is something which is very critical to the nation building. And of course, the institutions are always, higher education institutions are always into capacity building and capability building. And with the kind of investment that some of the major higher education institutions have made in their infrastructure and the research capabilities and the human resource capabilities, I'm sure the stage is well set for a mutually cooperative and collaborative work. And I always believe that together each one achieves more. It means whatever may be my individual capacity, when 3-4 people join together, the combined efforts would be so much more potentiating that the outcomes will be that much more better. And therefore, I foresee a lot of opportunities, and I foresee a lot of cooperation and collaboration possibilities in all these things. And I'm particularly quite attached to Navy at a personal level. Though I served the Indian Army in olive greens for 38 years, I had a reasonably long tenure with Navy. I did a 3-year tenure with in the INHS Ashwini. And I also took up some research projects on naval ships with regard to noise levels and noise-induced deafness among engine room sailors. And perhaps I'm one Army officer who has sailed in all classes of ships and submarines. So that was in the mid-80s, but then the fascination has not left me. And I'm sure Mahe is willing, Mahe will be supportive, and Mahe with open arms will invite any such collaborative efforts towards making things better in the underwater domain awareness campaign that you have taken up. And towards capability building and nation building, we will take our, we will walk hand in hand with you to make this happen. Thank you very much for this opportunity, Commander Das, and I wish you all the very best. Thank you very much, and Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, sir. You really gave a very good perspective, and we definitely look forward to work under your guidance, and we would work very hard to take it forward at a very, very different level. Thank you so very much, sir, and we'll continue this discussion and look at something more concrete on the ground. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, I would request my very close friend Karthik Kittu to kindly give his perspective. Abhay Jere sir spoke from the different side, and from the ground side, I would request Karthik to kindly talk about the innovation aspects. And he has been involved, and he has been in very, very important positions. Even he may not look very old, but the achievements have been at a very different level. I don't want to, it's a long list. He has represented India in multiple delegations abroad on cybersecurity, and he has been involved in multiple innovation projects. He is part of multiple very big global organizations, and has a very different perspective on things. So Karthik, your turn, please. Thank you so much for joining us, Karthik.
Thank you, Commander Das ji, for this invitation. And of course, Praful ji, who I know from my delegation to Israel on cybersecurity, and all the eminent speakers. It was amazing to listen to all of you and learn from all of you. It's very educative because, I mean, this is, frankly speaking, this is new, except for only one thing that I remembered when I addressed a gathering. I will come back to that. But, it's very fascinating world. And of course, Abhay Jereji and team, hats off to them. I'm part of Pvt Bangalore, which also houses one of the Institute Innovation Councils, and the kind of programs under him the MOE has created is simply fascinating at foundation level, at the advanced level, and many programs. I mean, it is path breaking, and even something like the Kalam program for IP literacy. All of these, are very path breaking. I would want to give a small different perspective. I'm a former member of the Rotary International Rotaract and Interact Committee, the committee that governed the youth movement of Rotary in the world, about 250,000 youth. And exposure to that for the last 18 years has given me various perspectives. Currently, I also was on the Chief Minister's War Room on COVID-19, and we tried to put 10 million youth in India together to combat COVID. And like someone might think it's next to impossible, or people might try to laugh, but like that's the power of coordination. That's the power of working together, unlike the olden times, right? So I'm also part of UNICEF's UA program as the National Task Force Lead for Civic Youth Engagement. And when in 2018, UNICEF initiated this program to meet the urgent needs of education, skill development, employment opportunities for young people around the world, and somewhere in the age group of between 10 to 24. And with the Sustainability Development Goals Framework and the new UN Youth Policy 2030 in mind, Generation Unlimited provides an agenda that is universal to nature and in many aspects that can change things. So if you're looking at that aspect, I mean, one thing that actually hits me whenever I talk to my younger friends who are in this age group of the teens, that everyone's beat the Munas or everything else. I mean, they now have the power to think and maybe put together a framework that how the youth can play a significant role in the implementation, monitoring, reviewing of any kind of agendas, and also trying to hold the government accountable. At the same time, trying to help the government in various areas. Like we very closely work with the DST, with the Ministry of Electronics and IT as a tied center, and also with the MOE as a Institute Innovation Council. Like Abhayji said, the kind of hackathons when you put out, be it a 36-hour frame, 48-hour frame window or a 5-day window, they sit day and night and they finish it on the ground, and with some mentorship. Now I'm always fascinated in putting together 5 different kinds of people. In the olden days, when I also studied DSC, I must admit I studied physics, maths, computer science, and Kepler's law of planetary motion, which I don't know was only in the textbooks, right? It was nothing practical, but we had to write a long answer to pass in the exams. But today I see many of these projects on the ground. Day before yesterday, we had a hackathon at the Ministry of Electronics, and one of the students, believe me, mind-boggling. I don't know how he could think of it, but for the space, he thought how to clear the space junk. In the same way, we also received an application. Believe me, there is so much of dirt underwater. How maybe to clear the junk, or how to help many agencies to actually think on how the youth can come together to clear something like the underwater pollution or the underwater junk that is there, something like that. We received an application, right? Or for example, how to provide access for small scale artisan fishers to marine and resource markets. I mean, and this came from tier 3 and tier 4 cities. Being in IIIT Bangalore, we always used to open our small hackathons to our students. But believe me, this time when we put a call, we got 548 applications, and these were primarily from tier 2 and tier 3 cities, right? So and this is organizations like yours, Commander Das, which is very specialist, bring this new approach to it, and it would help students significantly think on these lines. One of the so I also I used to head the youth wing of Rotary called Rotaract, as I said, and I used to head the South Asia Committee with 8 countries: India, Nepal, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. And we happened, for the first time this year, we happened to appoint in 11 years of history a chief sustainability officer for the entire youth wing, which is about 1.2 lakh strong. And one of the thoughts the chief sustainability officer was telling me is that significantly reduce marine pollution of all kinds, in particular from land-based activities, including marine debris and other kind of pollution. Now, I mean, he's based out of Sri Lanka, and he, I think, understands it much better than us sitting out of here. Now, that got me thinking that out of the 17 sustainability development goals that are given, like the no poverty, zero hunger, I mean, decent work and economic growth, I think one of the most important ones happened to be life underwater. I think point number 14 was life underwater. And this is, I think, one of the upcoming things. one of the other things that actually really, I got fascinated is, I was in Guam in Micronesia, the westernmost point of the United States territory, sometime, I think, end of 2018, where I was invited to talk, on leadership and learnings from India. And one of the things I learned from them is something like they have an ocean conservancy, and every student is mandated there once in a year to actually get to the ocean and something like the ocean and the waterways, and look at the serious kind of pollutions that is choking our planet. And far more, they come together in groups, and they have created a framework on how to clean up trash, and how to collect the data, how to organize the data, and how to publish these results. And there's a whole list of things. It can be the most likely items that they can find is some bottle caps and others, or some fishing gear like the buoys and the fishing line, or any other appliances like the balloons or some tires or some packaging materials and other things. And this is built into a framework. My request is, Commander Das and the eminent people on this panel, if we put together the younger youth, some kids in the age group of 10 to 19, they could significantly contribute on this. And we put the next group of people who are between 21 and 28 on the other angle to this. So this would, I think, significantly help us in creating awareness on this wonderful domain, and also taking it forward. And definitely it would help us involve them and make them aware of how the fascinating world of this place is. Of course, like Abhayji said, research is wealth and innovation is knowledge to wealth, right? Many of these bootstrapped ideas, sorry, I think I lost my video. So many of these bootstrap ideas can come from many of these hackathons and putting people together. Like we said, for example, we've always put 5 engineers together. Let's try to come up with a hackathon and put 1 management student, 1 engineering student, then 1 BCom student, 1 doctor, and someone from the underwater domain awareness space together. And then it gives a holistic idea for a startup, because 2 people together on a project, 2 engineers together can think on the engineering line, but 5 people from 5 domains can think in 5 different lines, and that comes together, and that is routed through the ministry and through your foundation and through this program. Well, on that note, thank you very much for giving me this humble opportunity. I'm really honored when I spoke to Commander Das and Prafulji and told them, you have very, very, very eminent personalities and I might look young. They said, no, Karthik, you have to say a few words. And I don't know whether I could add a lot of value, but thank you again, Commander Arnab Das, and this esteemed gathering for giving me an opportunity. And I would look forward to work with all of you from any of the organizations I have worked with before, and put this together, because I have always believed the last 20 years, when someone asked me, why do you do so much for Rotary and UNICEF and other programs, they said, I was sitting once in the last bench, and I think I have put a mandate for myself that what I have learned I would pass on to the next generation, and they pass on to the next generation, and it goes forward. If the odds are against us, we are stronger. Thank you, sir, and back to you.
Thank you so much, Karthik. You never leave an opportunity to impress us, and every meeting of yours has been at a different level, and thank you very much. And definitely, Karthik, I look forward to working with you, and I think UDA requires a significant amount of support from out-of-the-box thinkers like you, and we will definitely reach out to you and seek your support and guidance. Thank you very much, Karthik.
Namaste.
I would now request Captain Kapildev Behel, sir, mariner, and has been part of the administration also for a long time now, and a core maritime specialist, to kindly make his presentation. Behel, sir, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you, sir. Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Arnab Das and MRC for inviting me to this to speak at this event. Listening to the papers today has been indeed a delightful, in fact, enriching experience for me. Despite 17 years at sea, of which about 6 years were in command of merchant ships, I was ignorant on this subject, but now I'm relieved that I'm not alone because I've seen several esteemed speakers alluding to this before me as well. So it's obviously a subject that needs wider acceptance and knowledge. Now, we are a maritime nation. We dominate the Indian Ocean. I wish I could state with equal confidence that we are endowed with a sea-minded population as well. Referring to the concept note, the UDA framework impacts the following sectors: security, blue economy, environment and disaster management, science and technology. The merchant marine is one of the existing stakeholders in the UDM framework as I see it. I am studying this framework from the lens of the merchant seafarer and the maritime industry. By maritime industry, I mean the combination of the port sector, the shipping sector, which includes international, coastal, and inland ships, as well as the cargo trade. Now, I'll refer to the first aspect of security and blue economy. The impact on security and the blue economy is directly proportional to the number of ships registered in India, or at least Indian controlled ships. Indian tonnage is important, not only as a source of surveillance, but also strategic protection in the event of political embargo affecting our trading partners or sanctions affecting our trading of goods and essential goods, or even piracy or unilateral imposition of war risk premiums, all of which increases the cost of our goods. Furthermore, there must be sufficient operational tonnage in our control in order to implement the option of requisitioning Indian flag vessels as and when the needs arise. The quantity of our international cargo trade carried on board Indian flag vessels has steadily been decreasing from more than 30% a few decades ago to the dismal figure of less than 8% today. The statistics of Indian tonnage and number of ships is also disproportionately small in almost every parameter that I can think of when compared to world tonnage and number of ships. The failure is not only because the shipping industry is capital intensive, but I'm afraid to say this because we lack the will and direction to create a business atmosphere conducive to ship owning and ship operations. We need to ensure favorable economic conditions which are consistent over a long period. As regards the second aspect of environment and disaster management, the environment management of the Indian Ocean is impacted by the huge number of merchant ships, as you yourself have alluded today, which ply along the coast of India as they transit the ocean. But most merchant seafarers are ignorant of the adverse effects on the underwater domain. A reach out program to make these stakeholders aware may reap rich dividends on the surveillance front. The National Oil Spill Disaster Contingency Plan mandates a twofold preventive measures to ensure that the marine environment is protected. That is, oil spill contingency plan, maintenance of equipment. The Indian Coast Guard is tasked with the multitude responsibilities, but in absence of underwater data and sampling resources, pollution response efforts are restricted to the customary pollution response on the surface. MRC may wish to study the possibility of supporting this endeavor by collaborating such that efforts complement each other. The Coast Guard conducts periodical audits of Tier 1 facilities of ports and oil handling agencies and conducts oil spill mock exercises and drills in accordance with the terms of their contingency plan. It may be worthwhile for MRC to consider strengthening this effort by segregating the operations and audit services with such active collaboration as described above. Thank you, sir, and I wish to remain associated and be glad to attend your other seminars in future as well.
Thank you so much, sir. It definitely brings a very different perspective, and so we'll continue to engage with you and seek your guidance and how we can work together. Because you come from the core maritime sector and you have been part of this for a very long time, and even now you are actively involved. So we certainly will seek your guidance to take it forward. Thank you so much, sir. Now, I would request Dr. Ajay Kumar, sir, to kindly make his presentation. Ajay, sir, has a very different career profile, starting with a MBBS doctor. He joined the Indian Police Service, has been in very, very critical positions there in the state of Bihar, and worked with different types of leaders, and have been part of very critical kind of situations. Then sir was in the corporate life. He worked with the Tatas at the corporate office and have been doing a whole lot of things. And now sir is, then he was a member of parliament, and he continues to do a lot of contribution to the COVID effort also. Sir is heading a company, and to us, sir has been a great mentor. Thank you so much, sir. We've had some very, very insightful interactions with you, and we continue to seek your guidance. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. Ajay Kumar, sir, please.
So, first of all, thank you, Commander Arnab. Thank you, Praful, and all the distinguished colleagues on the panel. You know, when actually and I can speak wearing a excuse me, wearing a civil servant cap or a political cap. The fact is that the underwater domain awareness is actually minuscule even amongst the policymakers. Forget you know, the general public awareness. So I was hearing lots of speakers earlier speaking on involving young people, and that's fantastic. But the fact is that majority of the political class inside the parliament or outside are totally unaware. I was earlier in the defense committee when I was a member of parliament from Jamshedpur. And neither is there a patience to understand, and maritime issues are complex, and neither is there an effort to educate them. So they're two parallel, you know, what would you say in a simpler form is that it's a making of a perfect storm. So I'll first give an aspect from the parliament perspective. The parliamentarians are very poorly briefed on the maritime security. Forget any kind of security. And there needs to be a significant change there. And how do we do it? I think the Maritime Research Centre and all of you who are like what the PRS has done in terms of legislation. There's a organization called the PRS which does a remarkable job in educating MPs. But again, if you look at the PRS does a seminar discussion every day during the parliament session, but the attendance is less than 1% of the population of the parliament. So there is no premium on being an educated parliamentarian. So that's the first challenge you have. Understanding it, and only unless the political leadership understands, and since the political leadership doesn't understand, either it is outsourced, and if it is outsourced to the professionals like the naval officers, the Coast Guard, the various maritime experts, that is also still okay. But the inability to, you know, for them to communicate effectively, understand those challenges is one aspect. I can't claim to have any great knowledge on the maritime security, because I can speak from what I read as much as I can. There was a very good article, I think, by Mr. Raja Menon the other day in the Indian Express on speaking on China and how we can use a leverage on the Indian Ocean and the Bay of Bengal, the Indian Ocean specifically, to multiply our influence to ensure that we are safe on our western and eastern borders. Now, those kind of discussions need to happen at the parliamentary level. The second thing which was very interesting, so there are three buckets, I'll just make it a short, but so there are three buckets. One is the parliament needs to be more engaged. It doesn't seem to be happening. How do we resolve that? is something which we need to understand, that because the level of knowledge and the interest is minuscule. Then the civil servants seem to be gloriously ignorant of what's happening. I was in Andamans a few days back, went for a political discussion. Now, Andamans is very interesting because Andamans has got over 380 odd islands which are uninhabited, 40 islands which are inhabited. One of the islands belongs to Burma, where the Chinese have built a tarmac. They built the Air Force tarmac there. So makes it very dangerous for the from the Indian perspective. But the fact is that we have 400 odd islands uninhabited, because we don't think it's important from a security perspective. It's first challenge as far as the even basic understanding of what is important. Same thing with Lakshadweep, same thing with other islands. The civil servants there who come in from the Union Territory cadre come in for a couple of years and they don't look at the Andamans or Lakshadweep as home. So that's the second challenge. Then the policy makers who get into the Ministry of Defense and the Ministry of Environment or the Ministry of Education, Department of Education, have no clue by and large about the maritime issues, opportunities in the blue economy. So how do we educate parliamentarians? How do we educate, before we start educating students, right? How do we educate the bureaucrats is very critically important. There was lots of noise when the attack on Mumbai happened. And the Coast Guard suddenly became a very important aspect. I was in the parliament at that time and we started making those political outposts. We made those police outposts and the Coast Guard outposts and strengthened them. But those are very short-term perspectives, right? So that is one aspect. The third aspect is I strongly believe, and I'll give you a life example. I did my medicine from a place called Jipma, Pondicherry. Now, there were lots of guys from Andaman who used to come and study in Jipma because government used to nominate a few seats. So most of the seats were from the entrance exam, but there were some seats which were for people from Andamans and Northeast and other places, Lakshadweep. There was some kind of a quota. But the moment the government of India made a medical college in Andamans, it significantly changed the healthcare setup. So the fact is that if you want to do underwater domain awareness, I think we must start with Kakinada, Visakhapatnam, Chennai, Trivandrum, Cochin, Andaman, Lakshadweep, Calcutta. Because to expect somebody from Bhopal to have an inkling of what's happening, not happening. So and I'll tell you, my dad also used to be a civil servant, so I'll tell you on government, and I've been a government servant. So one thing we need to understand is, this is a space where the government needs to take a very, very serious intervention. Build capacities, creating maritime institutes, strategic institutes across. Otherwise, we are just making India much more vulnerable, not understanding how badly we are. How do we strengthen the economic? So how do we look at the maritime underwater domain awareness and not only underwater, even the maritime awareness? How do we build a strategy which includes security, which includes economy, which includes other kinds of awareness? Now, simple, small example, and I'll finish it off, and if anybody would like. One of the biggest challenges for India is the rare metals, right? The rare metals, the majority are from China. But the underwater sea is one of the richest sources of molybdenum and all this stuff. Rare metals, which are used in all your software, in your hardware development. But there's no discussion at all on those issues. Now, nobody in the private sector can, in a reasonable cost, go and do mining. So you need public sector dominance to ensure India's security in terms of rare metals. The Americans seem to be doing it. There is huge amount of work happening on maritime and latching on to putting huge turbines across the sea, deeper into sea, not 60 meters, which is the general trend, but go deeper into sea, because The amount you can generate is huge amount of power. But no discussions in India at all. So I think the first issue is educate the politicians, the parliamentarians, educate the bureaucrats, and then you have some chance of, shifting the needle. Otherwise, I've seen it myself personally when I was in the defense committee and all. Nobody seems to have the interest, nobody seems to have the inclination, nobody seems to understand how it is critically important. Most of the debates, discussions are so facile and so unimportant. So that's the point. So I think the Maritime Research Institute can first start off educating the civil servants and the politicians. It's not an easy thing. I've seen PRS trying to educate the MPs and different members of the Legislative Assembly. It's not easy. But you can start off with those Legislative Assembly like Pondicherry, like Kerala, Tamil Nadu, these Andaman public representatives from the Panchayati Raj system, and the civil servants who are engaged, and then obviously the military people. I think those are the things we need to actively pursue if you want to make a significant impact. Otherwise, and the capacity building and institutions of excellence all along the coast, because Hyderabad or Bangalore will be least interested in marine biology. Hyderabad and Bangalore will be least interested, or Delhi will be least interested in underwater flora, underwater security, overwater security. And that's my view. So I think if we sharpen our focus on to educating these guys, we would be doing. That's my view. And thank you so much for the opportunity. Really, and I want to thank Commander Arnab Das and Praful, because seriously speaking, these are stuff which nobody seems to be bothered and which is critically important for this country, from a citizen's perspective. You don't even see it in main TV discussions. I've been a spokesperson for the Indian National Congress, and I've never attended a debate on maritime security for sure. I've never attended any discussion on blue economy. For that matter, I've never attended any debate on economy, so forget blue economy, because everything else is so that's my view. I think these are how we need to push the envelope on those discussions. So thank you very much, and power to you, Commander Das and Praful, and I know that the panel has got distinguished people. Professor Nalapat is there, General Venkatesh, and all people. I mean, sorry if I'm not taking everybody's name, but I'm very, very honored to be in you invited me for this discussion. Thank you so much, and God bless. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. We have taken note, and I think, as always, you've been very frank, and it does help us, sir. And we are definitely looking at that direction. And that's probably also the reason that we have requested you to join, because we are trying to make. We had Mr. Suresh Prabhu also earlier, and we've been meeting him, and we've had some more people, and definitely that's a focus area, and we are reaching out. And I have been slotted to make a presentation to the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Education to start with, but different parliamentary committees we are trying to reach out, and even the state, I mean, all the 9 coastal states, as you mentioned, we are going to start with. In fact, Pratap Heblikar sir is also here, and we are working together on certain aspects. But because sir, UDA has multiple dimensions. I mean, security is just one of them. So multiple aspects, specific committees and specific groups we would like to work out. I met the Minister Shipping also during my visit to Delhi, and we have requested him. And I think government is serious, but as you said, the mechanism has to be worked out, and how well we can work out that mechanism is going to see how we go forward in the future.
Thank you.
In fact, that brings us to the last speaker of the day, and I think who better than Madhav Nalapat sir, and I mean, he's the first professor of geopolitics in the country with a huge understanding of such issues, and I am not going to spend too much time in trying to introduce sir, because everybody knows him so well, and wherever we have discussed, sir's name has been mentioned, and we are so happy to have you on board today, sir. Thank you so much for joining us, sir, and I would request you to kindly make your presentation, sir.
Thank you, Arnab. I'm honored to be here today, and I must say
I was very glad to listen to my friend Dr. Ajay Kumar's presentation. The point is, Arnab, that we are now in a completely different kind of era. And if I may say so, using an old cliche, it's the era of the end of illusion. You know, there have been multiple illusions that have driven our policies. It's very risky, very frankly, when policy is driven by dreams, by illusions, and by misinterpretations and misunderstanding of who our friends are, who our enemies are, the degree of enmity, the degree of friendship, etc., etc. Uh, well, let's say that I jump down from, let's say, 10 feet. I mean, there is a chance that I might get, hurt. I certainly would. A teenager would probably not. But if you jump down from, say, 150 feet, well, you're almost certain to get into very serious trouble, and quite possibly you may not survive. So the point is very simple. We are now at the 150 or 200 of foot level, and we are looking down, and we are being pushed, if I may say so. So if, God forbid, the push succeeds and we do not jump, well, I mean, if anybody has tried jumping from 150 or 160 feet, well, if that person has survived, then that person can tell you what is the situation. So, our illusions have not been ended by argument or by discussions or anything of the kind. These are very, very important. There's no doubt about it. They have been abandoned by the sheer force of events. And almost all of us in this room have been through, if I may say so, very rapid transformations in our view of the world, in our view of the region, in our view of India, its capabilities, and the view of exactly what India's challenges are and their capabilities. There has been a complete change in the last few years on that. I would say around 2015, 2016 is when this kind of the end of illusion started operating. And I would say by about 2022, 2023, that era is going to be completed, in the sense that by that time, it's very probable that the force of that effort to push us down from 150, 160 feet will be pretty substantial, unless, of course, in the meantime, we succeed in building up a countervailing force. You saw, I mean, the Indian Navy is Air Force, our military. We are really, I'm truly privileged to be among a group of people who have served in uniform, and and I can tell you, I know that I mean, the example of General Venkatesh is here from my university, that once you serve in uniform, what are you doing? You're essentially saying that my life is secondary to the life of the country and to the safety and security of the people of the country. You're putting that safety and security beyond your own life. And I think there's nothing more precious to a human being than life, because everything else is useless if there's no life. So there is an end to illusion. And what is illusion? The illusion is first that conflict is not really possible. Now, there are different definitions of conflict. I apologize if for some people here, this is, if I may say so, I am reciting the alphabet, somebody who knows the language. For example, take China. To the Chinese strategic thinker, and we're talking of a span of at least around 2,000 years. The Chinese have stretched that to 5,000 years, and some are now stretching it to beyond that. But we can track it to around 2,000 years. They define war in a very broad sense. And they define war by the objective of war. And the objective of war, whether to a Chinese or to an Indian or to an American or to a Brit or whoever, is essentially to dominate the mind. To the Americans, it's not been very, they're not too worried about winning hearts. They believe that if you catch, an individual, and then you need not win the heart. The man will have to do what you say. Well, the Chinese are a little more subtle in these matters. They would like to win hearts and minds as well, if possible, through social media and whatever else, etc. But when they cannot, they will use a variety of theaters. One of the theaters will be society. And some of us have been tracking, for example, the use by China in India by the Sino-Pak Alliance, in the United States by the Sino-Russian Alliance, the very clever use of bots to ensure that the fringes of society start expanding at the cost of the moderate middle. Now, you know as well as I do, Commander, that it's very important for stability in society that the moderate middle, if it's not expanding at the expense of the fringe, which actually is the desirable outcome or the desirable eventuality, well, it certainly should not be shrinking. But there is an organized effort through social media, and this has been organized. I mean, experts who are doing this kind of thing. My point is very simple. I am an expert in absolutely nothing. Geopolitics is an extremely broad church, and what you do is find out experts. Then you get different pieces of a jigsaw together, and you try and put the right pieces together, and in such a way that what the jigsaw becomes clear, that enough pieces are put together to make the jigsaw clear. Well, the fact is that the fringes in the United States, the fringes in India, and please understand, Commander, I am not talking of a religious fringe. I am not talking of a political fringe. Frankly, these are not important distinctions. I'm talking of attitudes of the mind, the hatred for the other. It could be in the case of, for example, in the case of the United States, Republican for Democrat, especially, what they call, they're calling the entire Democratic Party a socialist party. The Democrats are calling the Republicans a party of, POT, party of Trump. There are elements of truth in that, and there are also elements of mischief. And frankly, that is human life, that is human conduct. We have each of us elements of mischief and elements of goodness and truth in us. So what is happening for the last several years in the United States and India, definitely, frankly, it takes a certain amount of effort to track down these bots, etc. I'm sure that Ajit Doval, whom I know very well, must be working very hard at it. But Ajit is a very tight-lipped person, which an individual in his position has to be. I'm sure a lot of, but it is worrying the way both in the US and India, the fringes, and please understand, I'm using the word fringes because there is different groups have also a fringe, and the groups have also got a force, a centrifugal force of the middle, the moderate middle. In any party, in any faith, in any belief system, you have the centrifugal force of what is called the central tendency in statistics, the mean, median, mode, central tendency. Any of us who have had some passing acquaintance with statistics is aware of that. But what happens if you have the centripetal forces are active and the centrifugal forces are not active, are somehow getting slowly overawed by the centripetal forces? I must apologize. Yeah, hello. Sorry, I've just checked into a hotel and I was taking my lunch. So, Commander, I gave my word at 6 o'clock and I'm definitely going to keep it because I'm honored to be here. Look, what I want to say very, very clearly is that there is an organized effort by the Sino-Pak lobby, definitely in India, the Sino-Russian lobby, definitely in the United States, that these democracies should have the centripetal forces expand and the centrifugal forces contract. And we can see that to some extent succeeding in our dialogues. For example, I've been struck very frankly by the tone of a lot of social media dialogues. I am a sampling individual. I believe in sampling, and I sample different groups, whether it's on WhatsApp or any other way or whatever. And it's very interesting how it's all black and white. you know, life is not black and white. Life is always shades of in between. They are, first of all, multi-hued, hopefully, but they're definitely shades of gray. It's very rare to see a total black or total white in the sense of complete innocence and complete guilt. But to the other is always completely guilty. And we are always completely innocent. And this is the conversation that is now expanding itself across social media. I'm not seeing an organized effort to alter that situation. If there are corresponding bots, if there is a corresponding, if I may say so, guided effort to ensure that the centrifugal forces are having the upper hand over the centripetal, well, it's been so, if I may say so, recessed that I've not been able to come across it. I've come across the other enemies working. I've not really come across a kind of a countervailing action, but I'm sure it must be there, of course. So we have very capable and competent people, and they would be understanding all this far better than I ever would from my, lack of information about so many things. Well, this is China. They believe in controlling the mind. They believe in controlling the body. And that has been their strategic doctrine for about 2,000 years. Now, we may call the Communist Party of China a kind of communism, Karl Marx, Lenin, Stalin, Engels. I mean, all the readings in Marx. Quite frankly, the Chinese Communist Party, there's a very big C at Chinese and a very tiny little c of communist. In fact, during my first visit to Beijing decades ago, I thought, let me, show my, my goodwill to the Communist Party of China by going into a bookstore and asking for a volume of Karl Marx. It was a long time since I had read Das Kapital or the 18th Brumaire or any of the works of Marx. So I thought having that and reading it would, make them understand I'm at least not hostile to Marx and his theology. He founded a theology, and it was for some time a very successful theology, although it didn't do too well in economic practice. I went to about 5 or 6 bookshops because when you go to China, you're the guest of the Communist Party. There's no point going to China in any other way except as a guest of the Communist Party, because you'll meet absolutely nobody there. And certainly you won't meet anybody in authority. We went to about 6 or 7 bookshops because the Chinese are very persistent people. And when my minder was told, look, I want to get a book, the readings of Karl Marx, in none of those 6 or 7 was there a book by Karl Marx, by Engels, by Lenin. There were some biographies of Stalin, but in the local languages, but nothing else. And most importantly, the shopkeepers, the booksellers, none of them knew who Karl Marx was. So I think that was a lesson to me as to how deep Marxist influence is in China. And we saw that. We have seen that for the 1980s. The time in which Deng Xiaoping began his economic reforms in China. There's very little of any, Karl Marx would certainly, if he had he would certainly have turned violent if he had seen the Chinese communists and still, in a sense, pretending to respect him. What I'm saying is, they are people who have a goal, and this goal has not changed for 2,000 years. And that goal is the maintenance of the Middle Kingdom. When they define the Middle Kingdom, it means what we call the center of gravity. Their term is Middle Kingdom. Our term is center of gravity. The center of gravity of the world, the center of gravity of global geopolitics, the natural way of life, the healthy way of life, according to them, is if China once again becomes the geopolitical center. And you can see Mao, for example. Mao represented that peasant tradition in China. And you must understand that there have been peasant rebellions and there have been peasant takeovers in China, as in Europe, and of course in India. There was a whole-scale land reform soon after independence, and the feudal people were removed. In the 1969, Mrs. Gandhi removed all the royal families, and her cultural revolution and the cultural revolution that took place in India in the 50s, 60s, 70s, I would say, it was more or less complete by the mid 70s, is as profound as the cultural revolution that took place in China, and which actually, although it did affect the Chinese people, it basically affected the Chinese Communist Party. The leadership was almost completely eliminated. Mao completely eliminated the leadership because they, frankly, did not like his concepts. And and as a consequence, Deng Xiaoping was able to write on a clean slate, tabula rasa, whatever you'd like to call it. And he wrote an economic reform program, which frankly, even a socialist like Bernie Sanders would not accept. I can tell you in India, no government has accepted the kind of frankly capitalist ideas that were enshrined as communist doctrine by Deng Xiaoping, using the vacuum of the created by the Cultural Revolution. Now, you could have had extreme, statists, Stalinists, for example, get into that vacuum. For some happenstance, China got Deng Xiaoping. I think, frankly, the Chinese were lucky in that particular leader. In the sense of Mao, we all know the history of Mao, how many people he killed, how many do. And we're all surprised that we go there. And frankly, there's a lot of admiration about him, just as there is about Stalin. Stalin is explainable. The Second World War, it was Stalin finally, after the disastrous mistakes he had made in the past of almost destroying the armed forces in his purges, he brought the nation together. And when it was almost certain that that the Soviet Union would be occupied completely by Germany, he resisted. He was nimble enough. Churchill and Roosevelt, again, Britain was fortunate. America was fortunate in having a Roosevelt and a Churchill, and Stalin had no compunction in reaching out to them. As Churchill said very openly, if it is necessary to destroy Hitler, it is necessary to have a pact with the devil and to have a partnership with the devil himself. I would be the first person to go to the devil and offer a pact. I think that is a very sensible policy. I'm sorry that in India, we are still a bit idealistic about these things. And we leave a few devils alone, even though, in our mythology, devils are even as useful, if I would say so, or at least almost as useful as the devas are. So I don't really like to say that Mao doubled the territory of China. India, we lost a lot of territory, but now we have the Republic of India. There's unfinished business in Kashmir. Dr. Ajay Kumar was very correctly mentioning about some of the islands there. I hope many of them are not occupied or even electronically occupied. It doesn't take much, frankly. All it takes is a few, suitcases full of electronic equipment. And for all practical purposes, it's occupied. Why? Because to China, it is primacy, it is superiority, it is dominance, not only over land, but outer space, land space, ocean, surface of the ocean, undersea, body, mind. Well, they don't worry about the soul because I think, even in the ancient doctrine, Taoism, etc., it's very difficult to locate the concepts of Atman, a soul or something there. If there is something corresponding to that, then many of us have missed it. But I'm just trying to say this, and they see an obstacle very correctly. Frankly, they read us extremely well. And, it took some of us a long time, frankly, to understand that our hopes of a rapprochement, our hope, I was hopeful for, except for the last maybe, 8 or 9 years, that the Chinese are smart people and they could be persuaded that, look, going with Pakistan against India is going to drive India into an anti-China situation. And that is going to harm China an awful lot. Somehow Xi Jinping has upended all that. And he has gone and, like Deng now, he has now created an entirely different kind of strategic framework. Mao created his own strategic framework. Deng created his own strategic framework, and economics is part of that. Xi has created his own strategic framework in which the private sector, you've seen, for example, what happened to Alibaba and all these great Chinese successes. I mean, essentially, I'm sure that Xi Dada, as he's called there, Xi Uncle, would have asked Jack Ma, look, Jack Ma, I want every bit of data that you can squeeze in all your markets. And I want you to make that transparent to the PLA so that we can develop weapons. And don't forget, Arnab, about 78% of the world's gaming industry. I mean, I'm afraid, when I was considered young, there was no such thing as online gaming. And I think I'm not flexible enough to have tried online gaming, but 78% of that industry. And why is this online gaming industry important? Why is it that we are so exposed? And why the Prime Minister made a very good decision in blocking these apps. Frankly, it's not a perfect border. It's something like the India-Bangladesh border. It's not yet like the elements of the Pakistan border. It needs to be. It's a bit more like the India-Nepal border in some respects, because metadata is what drives artificial intelligence. And anyone who has gone to China, and if I may say so, the year 2000, our university, Manipal, hosted the first India-China major track 1.5 or 2 or 3 or whatever. Frankly, these numbers don't mean much. Dialogue. Sitting colonels and other officers of the PLA sat with sitting colonels and other officers of the Indian Army. And I told our people, let's be blunt to them. Let's not, we are not, none of us are diplomats. And I'm happy to say that the people who attended that thing in uniform, the people who attended that from the different, branches of the services, etc., in the 2000 India-China dialogue, some of it is in the form of literature. I hope a lot of that is online. If it's not, I would request our university to put it online. We have an entire volume on that India-China talks. We were very blunt to them, and they were shocked, because they said, we have gone everywhere in India, we have gone multiple times, we have never seen this kind of talk. And regrettably, even today, a lot of the talk is very, if I may say so, it's very, it's not direct. We gave a very direct talk that you guys are definitely not friendly to us. You're doing this and this and this. And frankly, we don't like it. That was a very direct conversation that was there in the year 2000. And they went back a little upset. And I think they were convinced that the group represented there was some kind of an agitprop group. And they didn't really represent the real opinion of the Indian possibly they did not, but they represented the truth. They represented the facts of life. And the reality is that today we are facing up to the facts of life, not because we are planned ahead, but because the facts of life are staring us in the face. I mean, you had the First World War. I've studied the history of not so much the conflicts, because I leave that to the people in uniform. I've studied how wars began and how wars ended. That has been the trajectory of the war, of course. Why there was one winner, one loser. What was the evolving trajectory? Sometimes the winner, sometimes the loser. In the case of Hitler, he made the mistake of his life going after the Jewish community, because the Jewish community that finally ensured, through the abundance of talent that they had, and which they were forced to, some of them fortunately survived. They're among the most brilliant people in the world. Hitler did a tremendous disservice to humanity by whatever he did. But whether it's a nuclear bomb or whether it's so many other, what Winston Churchill called the Wizard War. And the Wizard War, frankly, the British broke the Enigma Code by about 1942. From 1942 onwards, Hitler was completely transparent. His army, his Wehrmacht, his Luftwaffe, his navy, Admiral Dennett, was transparent. And they never realized the unbreakable code had been broken in 1942. And it's no accident that from 1942 onwards, by the middle of 1942, I think there are so many interesting battles. Things started going downhill for Hitler, and they never really recovered and went back uphill, except for small zigs and zags there. Well, I'd only like to say that, I've come across a lot of friends who say, well, don't worry, for example, let's say we buy equipment, and the equipment is from countries that are close to China, and that equipment may include some Chinese. Don't worry, we are smart enough, we can handle that. Well, I must say that, I don't postulate at any time that anybody is smart enough. Some challenge comes up, some situation comes up, and we need to plan for the worst, and we need to plan for contingencies. We need to plan for redundancies. And of course, this is, old thing to you. So what I want to say is we have why does this country dislike us so much? Because they know that just as they emerged as the tiger on the mountaintop of the Eurasian continent. Look, we are talking now about, about Asia and Europe. Now it's Eurasia. Your entire, Belt and Road program of Xi Jinping, which didn't make sense to accountants, frankly, to chartered accountants and to businessmen, but it makes sense from the point of view of creating a spinal column running right through Eurasia. And it makes a sense from the point of view of Xi Jinping getting rid of dollars, because the Chinese are actively working for a reset of the US dollar. They would like to see the US dollar collapse by 30, 40% of its value, suddenly, over a period of days. And they're anticipating that. They're working for that. Well, you look at RT, Russian television, you will see that RT is openly talking about this happening now. Whereas some of us, years ago, we said, this is what the Chinese want. And the Americans are now slowly waking up to that. Because the reality is, being number one in the world, the dollar as the world reserve currency gives the Americans a tremendous amount of leeway in their economics, which other countries don't have. I mean, I've been in the media industry. I've been in I would say pretty reasonable positions, and I'm still advising several media companies. There's a big difference between being number one in a market and being number two in a market. The number one guy, newspaper or whatever, gets about 60 to 70% of the total advertising budget, ad spend. The other chap gets about 20%, 25%. The balance, all the others fight for the balance 5 or 10 or maximum 15%. So everybody else fights for 15%. This chap walks away with at least 50%, if not 60%. That's the advantage of being number one, besides being the world reserve currency. It is no accident that Xi Jinping went in for digital technology. I think that's the future, and digital currency. Now we are doing that. The Americans are doing that. They have got ahead. And look, I want to make one thing very clear. China is not, in my view, a stable society. The Communist Party of China was a stable structure, but Xi Jinping's strategy and tactics is very oriented towards one, state control. And the entire growth of China from the 1980s onwards has been a decentralization of control. Now, regrettably, sorry, yes, you can come upstairs. The door is open. I'm on my conference. Thank you. I'm sorry, Arnab, that I mean, this is life, human life. We just arrived in Bengaluru and we're going off to Delhi tomorrow. So anyway, coming back to that, the fact of the matter is that Xi Jinping has centralized authority in the office of the General Secretary to an extent that we have not seen except under Stalin. And Stalin began decentralizing when the Germans attacked him in 1941. And he realized that over-centralization does not work. Stalin he tried to destroy the leadership of practically every institution that he felt was strong enough to challenge him, including the Red Army. And he killed some of the finest officers of the Red Army. And I can tell you part of the explanation why for nearly a year and a half, if not more, the Red Army and the very valiant Russian people. I think Indian people are magnificent soldiers. Russians are a close second. They're also magnificent soldiers. The Israelis are magnificent soldiers. These three, I would say, are the top soldiers in the world. But I'd like to say that Stalin got, decentralized. And that was when the Soviet Union survived. That is, she has re-centralized. Mao actually did not centralize. I mean, you're talking in terms of centralization, he destroyed the party. That is extreme decentralization. Everybody was on his or her own. You had multiple new cells coming, new doctrines coming, and you had the little red book of Mao, and that red book will tell you exactly what you want to hear, whatever you want to do. If you have power, you get, and you have some, sentence in the red book that you quote, and you can do what you like. So the reality is, decentralization was the key. Now re-centralization has taken place. The second thing is, frankly, I mean, again, pardon me, I'm using a whole, things which are not, if I may say so, in a scientific or academic setting, because let me say, a lot of what we discuss has absolutely no relevance to reality. Real life is a bit different, unfortunately, from some of the theoretical models that we discuss. I'd like to say that we have, for example, a Gujarati way of doing business and a Marwadi way of doing business. These days, fortunately, under Prime Minister Modi, business is much cleaner. And it's not only under Prime Minister Modi, it is a reality of the digital space. When a transaction goes digital, it can and will be tracked. You cannot eliminate it. You can avoid, you can destroy data here, destroy data there, no problem. But you will be able to track and trace it. So people are forced to go legitimate because systems can catch them. Today, somebody escapes. I mean, months or years from now, the entire trail of payments is going to be clear, because today the banking system, without digital banking, you can't really go in for large sums of money. So that's a good news. That transparency is coming no matter what. And the Prime Minister is pushing it very hard in his Digital India. There was Hong Kong at one time was a place you could be born and you could have a long life and depart and not see a single government agency. Everything could be done by telephone or online. Well, India, I think, will head in that direction, the digital direction, which is there. But what I want to tell you is very, very simple. What I want to tell you is that they are, in my view, Xi Jinping is taking a huge gamble. Deng Xiaoping was not a gamble, because the Chinese are even more shopkeepers than the British. They are born traders. They are born hagglers and bargainers. And when Deng Xiaoping liberated them, they felt great. Look at Jack Ma. Look at Tencent. Look at all these other the Chinese companies that have become multiplied. Now Xi Jinping says every one of you is going to come under some commissar or the other. Let's see how this plays out. In my reckoning, it's a. I mean, I don't want to say anything negative or nasty. I might land up there, again in the future or something. And if I land up there, I'd certainly like to come back to remain there under an extended period of time. Although you could be getting, room and board. But in any case, what I'm trying, it's a 50-50 chance, let's say. But it could well be a different chance. So let's be honest. These guys are not 10 feet tall. They are 6 feet, but the centralization is having the same effect on them as it had in the Soviet Union during the years of Stalin. I would say 37, 36, 37, 38 are the years in which centralization took place. We saw the effect in 1941. The German army cut through the Red Army like hot knife through butter. It's completely just cut through them. I mean, the way, in fact, our troops did in Bangladesh. So I only want to say that, look, but we have to make sensible choices. We have to make sensible choices based on the present. I'm not going to strain the patience of others for longer than a minute and a half more. And that means looking reality in the eye and framing a strategy that is not based on some kind of an esoteric concepts, but on hard-headed reality. For example, the concept that India will ever get Chinese goodwill to become a permanent member of the UN Security Council is not going to happen for at least a generation more, maybe 2, maybe 3. But depending on the trajectory of China, of course, during that generation, a lot of things could go wrong in China, a lot of things could go right in India, and that would be a geopolitical alliances. The Quad is a movement in that direction. Anthony Blinken was here. I am very certain that there would have been people in that delegation, meeting people in our delegation to make sure that as and when there is a fresh aggression by China, and some of us have been very clear that it is definitely going to happen. The question is when. Well, the Americans, I mean, the ones who have talked to me, have very clear. They would like to see a minimum of 1,500 individuals be returned with honor and circumstance in a prone position across the border to China. About 50, 60 you can conceal. Maybe 150, 200 you can conceal. 1,500 you cannot conceal. And that would have the same impact as an economic slowdown in China, if not worse, because Xi Jinping has built his credibility, his power base on the military, on military success, on conquering space, conquering sea space, conquering underwater space, taking over land space. And if regrettably, and I would like to say, as you know, every human life is precious. Although, if I may say so, if my country is at war, I certainly wish that our life is protected. And I'm not very concerned. I mean, frankly, not as concerned at all about the other life. But the Americans who I have talked to said that they are very clear that 1,500 at least should be sent back with honor to that part in a prone position, and they will remain in a prone position. It will be impossible, and they should be sent back with full publicity. It could not happen in Galwan because of the circumstances of the situation. And secondly, even if we had this thing, generally we are a little squeamish about these things. I don't think that, personally, I don't think we should be so squeamish. Long back, one of our people was tortured by the Pakistanis. I mean, when I was consulted by friends in government, I said, look, show the world what Pakistan is. That they're a bunch of, I mean, the military there has got an animal mindset. It's not a professional army. But our people said, no, this is too, whatever. The same, I mean, the mindset that you had Kandahar, all right, let's ensure that nothing happens or whatever. Look, that has changed now for two reasons. One, Indian people have evolved. We have a young generation now, which is far more realistic and far less starry-eyed, frankly, than I was when I was their age, quite frankly. Secondly, we have a prime minister who is extremely realistic. He comes from Gujarat. The Gujaratis are extremely practical people. Narendra Modi is a very practical person. And I mean, I don't think I'm revealing any great secret when I say that I think a lot of the friends and admirers of the prime minister would like him to win in 2024 again. In 2019, 2018 is not a done deal that there will be a majority. Balakot made that a done deal. He called the nuclear bluff of Pakistan. And frankly, the Indian military has frankly, shown the Chinese, and that is, in my view, why they're hesitating before going for the land conflict that they are going to initiate, because Xi Jinping needs that. With Taiwan, we have a lot of talk about Taiwan. Under Tsai Ing-wen of 6.5 years ago, she started integrating Taiwan with the US defense supply chain and network. Today, the Taiwanese have nearly 2,000 missiles that can get into any part of eastern China and devastate it. They'll be destroyed. Chinese economy will be destroyed. It'll go to becoming a Burundi or Lesotho. I think they know that. I don't think it is Taiwan. I think they're looking at a quick land grab in India. And I think this time the Americans have a point of view about where that's true. And I think discussions must be taking place as to how that situation will occur. All I want to say is I am very hopeful for our country because the geopolitical winds are favoring us. They favored China in the 1980s, up to around the close of the 1990s. In fact, the Hong Kong handover was a kind of firebreak. That is when slowly realization came what China was, the handover, 1997. But from around 76, even during Mao's passing away, there was a kind of a tailwind for China and a headwind for India. Now we have got tailwind. The Chinese have got headwind. Let's use that tailwind. And, I'll end with just one sentence. When Chief Minister Modi visited China, went to Shanghai, went to Beijing, he was treated like a very big VIP. Standing committee member was there to greet him in Beijing. Standing committee member was there to greet him in Shanghai. And our ambassador, Ambassador Jaishankar, made it a point to be with him throughout from airport to airport. He disregarded some advice that he got from Delhi that, he's just one chief minister out of so many. Why you bother about him? The reality is that whatever, Ambassador Jaishankar came back and told me how much he liked that interaction. And presumably the Prime Minister reciprocated. As I said, I mean, I know the Prime Minister very well. He hardly knows me at all, frankly. So, and that is the situation. If I'm in a crowded room, I'm sure if he were asked to point me out, he would point to Dr. Ajay Kumar and say, that must be Nalapat. But anyway, that's a different matter. We have got a Prime Minister like that. And very importantly, the tailwind is in our favor. The historical tailwind that is in the favor of China has now turned into headwind for them and tailwind for us. And Arnab, the work that you are doing, that our friends are doing in so many spheres, gives me hope that finally we are going to have a policy matrix that meets the needs of harnessing this tailwind rather than, frankly, allowing it to pass by. If we allow it to pass by, we are losing an opportunity which generations in the future are going to suffer because of that. If we take advantage of it, generations to come will benefit as they have benefited from China. In China, of course, Xi Jinping is a new ball game. It's yet to be seen how it will play out. I have certain forecasts about him. I have certain forecasts about Prime Minister Modi. I just hope those forecasts turn out to be correct. Thank you, Arnab, for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much. I think it's been a treat. We've had a diverse set of panelists and talking about the multiple aspects. And I think a new domain requires such diverse discussions. And I mean, we have had the best of people talking, right from the scientific community to the political spectrum to geopolitics to innovation. And we really thank everybody for this amazing interaction. And now I would request Prafulji, who's our advisor, Blue Economy, and my mentor in proposing the vote of thanks. Prafulji, please.
Thank you, Commander. It was such a pleasure listening to Mr. Nalapat. Sir, you really got my juices flowing. I mean, it was such a really a great treat listening to you. It reminded me of, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, Prafulji, we can hear you. Please go ahead, Prafulji.
It reminded me of an anecdote which said in the late 70s, since you mentioned Deng, sir, that in the late 70s, there's a conference after the, in the late, early 80s, 90s, there was a conference in Honolulu, and there was, since it was their country and it was the American president who goes first, and they reach a roundabout, and the driver takes a right turn and goes to the conference center. The second car was Gorbachev, and the driver asks, "Comrade sir, when he reaches the roundabout, so which turn?" So he says, "What are you asking me? Just follow them, the Americans. They are the most successful model in the world. So just go ahead." And the third car is Comrade Deng Xiaoping, and the driver, when he reaches the roundabout, asks Comrade Deng that, "Sir, which turns?" So he says, "Signal left and take a right." Deng Xiaoping said that, "No, hide your strengths and bide your time." And that is how China reached where it is, and that's how it built muscle. The Americans got them on board to counter the USSR. But now Xi Jinping has reversed that whole philosophy of hide your strength and bide your time. Xi Jinping is openly, blatantly saying that China has arrived and the dragon is breathing fire down the neck of the Americans, and not just the neck of the Americans, it is on the neck, down the neck of the Indians as well. So today, communist China is more capitalist than socialist India. I always say this, but it was very heartening, and when you ended on the note that there's great hope for India under Prime Minister Modi, because it also reminded me that when I went to China for the first time, I had a conversation with this young diplomat from the Ministry of External Affairs, and he says, you Indians are not straightforward. You say something, you do something, you are double fork-tongued and all. So I said, we guys are very simple compared to you. You guys eat snakes. What are you calling us fork-tongued? He said, no, what I mean is that you will always hide your intention. No, you went nuclear and you always said we are a peace-loving country and then you go nuclear. I said, see, our whole neighborhood is bristling with bombs. You have armed Pakistan and you expect us to remain quiet about it? So I said, we can't do that. I mean, see, you guys are totally there and we have to counter it. So what we interacted was, he said, no, you said the Buddha is smiling. That was the word. I would like to remind this audience that the Buddha is smiling was the code word when India went nuclear. See, let's not forget the laughing Buddha. The laughing Buddha is an Indian icon, the Bodhidharma. And Bodhidharma was a Pallava prince, if I'm right, if I remember my history right, sir, who went to Bodh Gaya, became a Buddhist, and he was an exponent of Ayurveda and Kalaripayat. And he is the one who set up the Shaolin Temple. So the Chinese better be aware that what happens when India starts laughing again, when the Buddha laughs now. Buddha smiled when India went nuclear. The Buddha could laugh. So on that note, sir, I'd like to thank Dr. Heblikar, sir, for setting the context and being so supportive. You know, like I like this statement of his when he said that the national security cannot be looked at through the narrow lens of the defense forces alone. Yes, security is far more than just defense security. There is energy security, there is food security, there is water security, and water is a dimension where Commander Das is he's got great depth there. That's what I would say. And thank you, Dr. Jerry, for connecting and being so encouraging and telling us how Lakshmi and Saraswati need to converge and how research needs to go on to knowledge and lead us to wealth. So we seek your support and continued guidance to create a hackathon for the underwater drones and in that domain. Thank you, sir. We look forward to your support. Thank you, Dr. Lieutenant General Venkatesan, for coming on board at the last minute, sir. Sorry, it is very, very nice of you to have accepted our invitation. Sir, we look forward to working with you and collaborating to set up so much more in this underwater, in this very nascent field of the underwater domain. Thank you, Karthik, my dear friend. Karthik and me go back almost 10 years. We were part of the cybersecurity delegation to Israel. Thank you, Karthik, for bringing all your youthful energy, and we look forward to for you to get that whole segment of the youngsters coming on board. Thank you, Dr. Kapil Debal, for making this audience aware that India needs to build sea-mindedness. We have to build a sea consciousness. We'll seek your support, sir. Thank you, Ajoy. Ajoy is a very old friend of mine. We work together, and he's always been a great source of energy and inspiration. Ajoy voiced exactly what Mr. Heblikar had said earlier in one of our webinars, that the coastal member of parliament, all the parliamentarians along the coast of the 9 coasts need to be got on board and need to be aware so that they can take the right decisions. You know, unfortunately, India is has a very continental culture. We need to build a maritime culture as well, maybe a hybrid culture, because we are the only country with an ocean. And thank you all the very good audience we've had. Thank you very much for your patient hearing and look forward to your engagement. Thank you very much, sir. And once again, I seek your support and guidance. Thank you. Thank you, Commander. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Prafulji. Thank you, everybody, the panelists, the special invitees, and the audience. We've had very eminent people in the audience also, and we are very, very grateful to you for your continued participation and support. Thank you so much. We end our webinar today. It's got a little delayed, but I think we've had a very fruitful interaction. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was very nice.